Call the Finance Committee meeting to order. Everybody have a chance to take a look at the minutes?
Move to approve.
Do we have a second? Can you guys hear me? Bill?
My husband's making faces at me over the top of the computer.
It says we're muted. Go ahead. There you go.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, so we've got a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion second to approve.
Who
Discussion?
made the first motion?
Randy. Sorry, Allison.
Okay. Nope, that's okay.
Even though you couldn't hear him, you might have been able to see his lips move. Maybe. Yeah, I could see that.
No.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on claims in the amount of $944,218.27.
Move to approve, but Allison, can you go through those, or why the big number?
The Vine Street and different capital projects are starting to kick up, which is the 140,000 of it. We also had debt service payments due of 62,000 for two of the bonds, and otherwise the general is just catching up from the previous week being behind.
Thank you.
Okay, we got a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion is second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on approving regular operator's license applications for Brad Erickson, David Everson, Thomas Berg, Marnie Lewis, Victoria Wood, Catherine Palumbo Fogarty, Derek Evenson, Erica Schletty, Lori Gustafson, Jamie Houston, and Janelle Vasquez.
For the period of June 16th, 2020 to June 30th, 2022, contingent upon successful completion of a background check and payment of any outstanding debt owed to the city.
I'll move to approve, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Motion is second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action to approve the letter of engagement with Bolton and Mink in the amount of $38,080 for the 2020 mill and overlay projects on Industrial Street and Stage Line Road.
Is Miraz?
Yeah, Mike is here. If you, Mike, you want to?
Is Dean not on? Must not be. All right, so this is a LOE to provide inspection services for the Industrial Street and Stage Line Road project. This was included in the engineering report. It was included in the original estimate, and we're just looking to finalize that document and bring them on board for the project.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second to approve. Discussion?
Mike, can we have these both, or whoever we have doing our engineering fees, with the next two items, that's $123,000
Yeah.
for just letters of engagement.
Yep. So the letters of engagement, the numbers that you see in front of you are based upon estimated time out in the field for the projects, for them to have their inspectors at the sites for a given amount of time, and that's how they come up with these figures. So if you want more explanation, I mean, Dean has a better handle on it.
I would, and I'd like to see what the billable hours are from what we approved their contracts for.
Okay. Yep, I can do that.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, did we have a motion?
Yeah. Joyce.
Yes.
And I seconded.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved. Discussion and possible action to approve the letter of engagement with Bolton and Mink in the amount of $85,400 for the Carmichael Road and Vine Street improvements related to the Bella Rose development.
So again, this is a letter of engagement with Bolton and Mink to provide the same inspection services related to the Carmichael Road and Vine Street improvements adjacent to the Bella Rose development. Those are slated to start here mid to late July, and looking to bring them on board to provide those inspection services for the city. And to your point, Randy, before you make a motion to vote, inspection services, the city has had a long history of hiring Bolton and Mink to provide inspection services. That might be something down the road here in the next couple of years where we look to bring that service in-house and hire a engineering tech where they would be able to provide these services at a discounted rate to both the city and developers, and yet we would be able to pay for that position in-house based upon, the numbers that we're seeing here. So it's something to just kind of lay the groundwork for future discussion, so.
Thanks.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
Motion and second to approve. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion possible action to approve the proposal submitted by Cedar Corporation in the amount of $14,975 for the Public Works Facilities Assessment.
So before the pandemic hit, this was on the radar for the Public Works Committee to move forward with, identifying, doing a space needs assessment of our public works facilities. Currently, we're in 3 separate sites. 2 of the sites are, rather old, right? And they're beginning to not serve the needs of the staff, the equipment, and just losing efficiencies for, having equipment stored all over the city. So we're looking, the Public Works Department and myself, or Public Works Committee and myself, are looking to lay the groundwork. This is the first hurdle, bringing in a professional engineering company to perform a needs assessment, look at our current facilities, look at the demographics, the future needs, identify space needs in the future, what land would be available, especially as we continue to annex in land adjacent to the city. Is there a current facility in the city that the city would be able to purchase if it were to come up for sale, so on and so forth. So this is basically just the foundation work for a future, facility. Now, I'm realistic and I understand that the current economic climate and the fire station just being built, I know this isn't going to happen overnight or within the next 3 to 5 years, but it's something that we would have in our back pocket. So if a facility did come up for sale that would fit our needs, we would be able to maybe pursue that. So it's just, like I said, laying the groundwork for that. I did receive 2 quotes, one from Cedar, one for Strand. Obviously, the one from Cedar Corporation is a lot lower. I have done work with Cedar in the past, and they are out of Menominee. They're actually doing a facilities, new public work facility for the city of Menominee as we currently speak. So, Public Works Committee approved proceeding with the Cedar Corporation to perform the space needs analysis. Funding for this fee would come from undesignated capital.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion and second to approve. Discussion.
Mike, how many square feet do you have right now for storage?
I don't know the answer to that, Joyce, to tell you the truth.
Do you have enough right now?
I mean, we have to store some equipment outside. It's just a matter of being in multiple locations, and then the facilities
I know
themselves.
that.
Yeah, I mean, many of you have toured the facilities and kind of know the condition they're in, and having to share one bathroom for 14 employees, no workspaces, so on and so forth. So I mean, it's like I said, it's not something we're gonna do within the next couple of years, but at least get the groundwork done so that we can start to work towards that goal.
Yeah. I think that this is really important to get started and have the information available so that if something does come up that we're ready. Thanks.
Anybody else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. I don't have anything. Anybody? Anything for future agendas?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. We stand adjourned. We'll call the council meeting to order. Everybody stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
the
America
United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, take the roll.
Mayor O'Connor,
Here.
Morissette,
Here.
Alms,
Here.
DeZiel,
Here.
Weber, Atkins Hoggett. Here. And Hall.
Here.
All right, first thing we have tonight are some presentations. We'll start with the Lake Malibu Association. Good to have you guys here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Jim Thomas. I have to say, well, I reside at 1140 Riverside Drive North in Hudson, Wisconsin. And I used to be on the Lake Malibu Association board. I have since retired from that position. Brian and a couple of other gentlemen have taken my place. So I'm sort of tonight taking this opportunity to hand the baton off to Brian. But before I did that, I just wanted to just give you a little background and a little bit of praise and thank you. We all know that the Little Falls Dam was a success. It became a reality. It got replaced. I just flew over it. It's completely full, and it's back to serving the purpose of letting little kids catch their first fish and do all the things that a lake is supposed to do in the middle of a park. And it would have been a heartbreaker not to see that become a reality. That reality, well, it became a reality because of what all of the three municipalities did. And I know that I stood in front of you, I think it was probably 3 years ago, asking for an amount of money to help fund the USGS water testing station on the Willow River. And as it turns out, it was a, I don't want to say insignificant, because with things going on, nothing is insignificant, but that participation, the participation of North Hudson and Hudson Township made this all come together. So at any rate, right now we're faced with a situation that the project should have gone off a little bit smoother. There should have been less silt and debris deposited in the lake. It should be in better shape for all of the municipality residents to enjoy, to fish on, to do things. We've been taking polls. We put up a new sign down at the landing, and we're asking for customers, too long in business. We're asking for the lake users' input on what they think about it, and the common denominator is the silt is troublesome. So what we have done, and I'm going to let Brian have the limelight on this, but Lake Malibu Association has stepped up and engaged with a firm, Applied Ecological Services, and we are going to try to spearhead getting this cleaned up. What we're asking for you going forward is to please keep this gauge station open for another 3 years. Brian, again, will get into the details of it. But what's so important to realize here is that what Hudson does, North Hudson will follow, and the Hudson Township will pretty much follow. And the marriage of all three of these municipalities, we all share equally in it, and it's so important. So with that, I just want to say thank you for everything that you've done while I was involved in the political aspect of things. And with that, I'm going to hand the microphone over to Brian.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time this evening. My name is Brian Breton. I'm a resident of the city of Hudson. I live at 555 Sunset Lane on the south side of Lake Malibu. I've been a resident on the lake for 5 years, and I was asked to serve when a member had been moving off the lake. So I'm decidedly the junior member, and have learned a lot from Jim. In my time on the lake, I've watched the vegetation deteriorate. I've seen the water clarity diminish, And also the navigability of the river, especially in the area where the Willow enters, has become very, very difficult, if not impossible in many of those areas. And the replacement of the dam is really just the first step in trying to restore the health of the lake. And going forward, AES is going to help come up with a plan and advise us on how we ultimately go forward with that, which will require efforts from the DNR, perhaps the Army Corps of Engineers. But to get to that point, we need lots of data collection, and AES is organizing data that we have brought together. There was a boots on the ground meeting on Thursday and Friday where we took them around the lake and also through the entire watershed. And part of that ongoing effort, as Jim said, will be the testing station from USGS. That started in 2012. It was expected to be a 3-year deal at that time because they wanted to research what was going on as far as transmission into Lake St. Croix. With the events that happened in the state park, that stayed open longer, and it's set to expire this year. As Jim said, the amount of money, it's not insignificant, but most importantly, it's really seeing that everyone's coming together, especially with the eyes of DNR and other legislators above us. So to continue this, USGS is willing to contribute a significant amount of money. The Wisconsin DNR will as well. We have other interests such as Trout Unlimited and Friends of the Willow. And with your blessing and support, we'd like to continue ideally for 3 more years at a level of $600 annually from each of the municipalities. We have 2 options with respect to testing. One would also involve a water temperature probe, which part of the dam engineering was to let cold water out for those trout populations within the river, and we'd like to make sure that that's also happening as well.
Okay. Brian, thank you.
Yes. Can I just add one thing to
Yeah.
this? I do want to let you all know that the Lake Malibu Association is
yes.
also,
Yeah.
we're putting in $600 a year with municipalities. And more importantly is, I'll let you tell me
Yeah,
about the
so I
18
kind of glossed over that. So AES is a firm that we've engaged, and the membership of the Lake Malibu Association has invested $18,000 just to have them come and do their survey and to help us get to this point. So we've made a pretty significant commitment, but we don't feel like we can get over the hurdle without the support of the municipalities as well.
Okay. Thank you. I was just looking at our agenda. Do we have that on the $600 on here?
No, we didn't have it on, we said the presentation, so it'll go on the next agenda for
Okay.
the $600 a year for 3 years, correct?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I had sent a letter a week or 2 ago, and
Yeah.
as I told Jim, I'm decidedly a novice and rookie when it comes to some of this stuff, so I didn't know about the finance committee, but I did detail that in the letter. Maybe not as clear as it should have been. My apologies.
No, that's fine.
No, that's fine.
I got it, and I
We'll put it on the
just,
next agenda.
yep. All right, anybody? Any questions? Thank you, guys. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you all very much. And we're not going to give up until this lake becomes something that all of the municipalities, the people that live here and use the lake can be proud of. So we're just not going to quit. So thank you very much for your help. in this.
Thank you. Thank you for your effort. Trilogy Consulting, Water Impact Fee and Sewer Connection Fee Study.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, yep, there you are.
Okay, great. Kip Peters, Utility Director. Basically, I'm just going to introduce Christy and Eric from Trilogy. They do have a presentation on water impact fee, sewer connection fee, sewer rate study, and a water rate study. We've kind of been going back and forth on this for about the last 6 to 8 months, getting these studies prepared for you guys tonight. So unless Aaron or somebody else has anything to add, I guess I'll just kind of turn it over to them. They do have a slide presentation, so I don't know if somebody could just share that content with the screen. I don't know if Aaron has it, or I think Mike might have it, or maybe if you can just give Christy the ability to do it, she should be able to.
Okay, here, I'll try and, oh, no, it's disabled for me. Okay, I tried to request a share screen and it says it's disabled, so I don't know if there's a way to change that out.
Brian, is
Oh,
there a
here
way
we
to do
go.
that?
Maybe I can do that now. Okay, let me try that.
Oh, yeah, try it again.
Can you see my screen? No? Okay.
Try it one more time.
Pardon?
Try it again.
Okay. All right, try that again. Okay, looks like I can do that now. Okay. All right.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this evening with you remotely and share the results of what we've been working on with city staff for some time now. We do have a lot of material to cover, so we're trying to just hit some of the highlights this evening, but please feel free to stop and ask a question if there's anything as we go along that you want to ask about. I'm going to start by talking about the water impact fee and the sewer connection fee, and I want to kind of handle those two items together because they are somewhat similar. So they're similar in the sense that they are both a one-time fee that's charged when you have a new connection to your water or sewer system, or they can also be charged when you have a connection that has an increased use, like a redevelopment, for example. They're used to pay for capital costs for your water and sewer system. And generally speaking, the amount of the fee is based on the cost of capacity needed to serve the particular connection, whether that be a house or a business or an industry or something like that. They are different, though, in the sense that they are enabled under different Wisconsin statutes. And I just want to run through briefly the requirements and limitations, and you'll see from that impact fees definitely come with a lot more strings attached in terms of requirements for implementing them and what you can use them for. So impact fees, as I said, are a fee charged to new development to pay for capital costs of new or expanded public infrastructure to serve growth. So I've highlighted kind of some of the key elements of there, and one thing that I want to just point out with impact fees is that they can only be used for new or expanded capacity. So they cannot be used for replacing existing capacity. And there's a number of types of infrastructure listed in statutes that impact fees can be used for, including water and sewer system facilities. And I would say water and sewer are probably the most common types of impact fees that you'll see amongst communities. And the other point I just wanted to make is that these are charged in addition to your normal subdivision infrastructure requirements. So you can require a subdivision to put in infrastructure within the subdivision, and then you can also charge an impact fee for larger, more community-wide facilities outside of that subdivision. So that's what impact fees are used for. This is just a slide that lists the statutory language as far as requirements for the impact fee amount that you can charge, and I just want to kind of run through these real quickly and summarize. As we said earlier, it has to be related to the need for new, expanded, or improved facilities to serve development. So you can't charge an impact fee unless you have a need to expand your system capacity in some way. The next one is a new thing that was added in 2017, and this has to do with you can't charge an impact fee that's greater than the amount of capacity you need to serve a particular development. And that has not been tested in the courts yet, but generally interpreted to mean that you have to distinguish between how much you charge, let's say, for a single-family home versus a business that's going to use more water and sewer service. Then the third standard there has to do with kind of on a community-wide basis. You can't include more costs in the impact fees than are the proportionate share needed for facilities to serve new development as opposed to existing development. So for example, if you have a little bit of a shortage in well capacity right now, so you're going to put in a new well, you can't necessarily charge all of the cost for that new well to new development if there's a portion of that capacity that's needed to serve existing development. The next one is that you have to have actual capital costs or reasonable estimates, so you have to have a basis for the amount of the fees. You have to reduce them for any grants you're going to be receiving for the facilities. And then you cannot include any amounts needed to remedy existing deficiencies. And then in terms of other requirements, impact fee revenues have to be segregated by fee. So you have to keep water impact fee revenues separate from other impact fee revenues. You can only use them for facilities that are listed in the impact fee study. If you don't spend the money within 8 years for most types of facilities, or 10 years for sanitary sewer, they have to be refunded to the payer of the fee. And it used to be refunded to the current property owner, and they changed that a couple years ago to say you have to return it to whoever originally paid the fee. And then again, you can't use them for operating expenses or replacement of existing facilities. So there's a number of strings attached with impact fees. Connection fees, on the other hand, are allowed under the same statute that allows you to charge for sewer service. And it doesn't have a lot of language in there as far as how much you can charge. Just says that you have to, you may classify properties based on volume of water, characteristics of sewage, or use made of the sewerage system. And so connection fees can be adopted just kind of as part of your schedule of sewer user charges. And you do actually have a connection fee on the books right now that is part of your sewer user charge system. And then unlike impact fees, connection fees can either pay for new expanded facilities, or you can use them to kind of buy into existing excess capacity that you already have available. And this applies in your case with your wastewater treatment plant that has a fair amount of existing excess capacity to serve future growth. There's no requirements for segregating the funds, spending them within a certain time period, or what you spend them on, other than that they are, spent on capital improvements. So the good thing about connection fees is that they're a lot more flexible than impact fees. That's a huge advantage. Unfortunately, with water rates being regulated by the Public Service Commission in Wisconsin, they will not allow you to charge connection fees for water systems. So, they're a benefit on the sewer side, but you can't use them on the water side. So that provides a little bit of context as far as what we're proposing for your fee structure on the water and sewer fees. Just to give a little background, your current fees include a sewer connection fee that was adopted back in 1997, and it's set at $1,450 per residential equivalent unit. So that's what a single-family home would pay, and then there's a chart in your ordinance that lists how many REUs would be assigned to different types of businesses and non-residential uses. So that was put in place to pay for a major wastewater treatment facility expansion that went in place in 2000, has not been updated since that time. And that one applies to all new connections to the sewer system. And then you also have a trunk sewer impact fee that is imposed under a different section of your ordinances, specifically for impact fees. And that one has been collected since 1997. We don't have a complete record of exactly what was in that study. It appears that it was updated in 2002. So that fee is $730 per REU, but it's charged on an acreage basis. Single-family residential pays $1,460 per acre, assuming that there's 2 units per acre. And then there's a chart in your ordinance that lists different fees per acre for different types of residential and non-residential development based on some assumed densities and things. This one only applies in the southeast quadrant of the city, and it was put in place to pay for some trunk sewer and lift station improvements down in that area. And based on the information that we were able to find on this one, it looks like all of the projects listed in that study have been completed and paid for. And then the third fee that you have is for water. That's also an impact fee. There's a study that was done back in 2002, and then you recently updated that in 2018 to add in some costs for well 10. So that one is currently at $27.19 per REU, or $5,438 per acre for single family. And again, it has a schedule of different amounts per acre for other types of development. And this one also is only charged in the southeast quadrant of the city. And that one, the original study listed some water mains, wells 8 and 9, and then you added 10 in 2018, and the Hanley and O'Neill Road elevated storage tank. Based on the records that we were able to find, it looks like those funds were never used actually to pay for water mains, and also that there's a substantial amount for the wells in the storage tank that have not yet been recovered. So there's a number of reasons to update and revise these fees. As you can tell, they haven't been thoroughly updated on the sewer side, really not ever, and on the water side, just a little bit of a minor update in 2018. And then the other thing is that in 2019, the city completed plans for your wastewater facility comprehensive sanitary sewer plan and also comprehensive water system plan. And those studies all recommended a substantial amount of improvements throughout the city. And then a lot of those improvements will benefit the entire city. And so with the current water and sewer impact fees being limited to the southeast quadrant of the city, that kind of limits where you, first of all, where you can collect those from, and then also what you can use the fees for. And that also leads to some issues with administering the fees. Number one, just determining whether someone has to pay the fee or not. And then another issue that comes up is that you've got different definitions of REUs, and the REU definitions for the sewer connection fee are a little bit outdated. And so it just makes it a little bit difficult to administer at this point in time. So what we looked at was rolling the sewer impact fee and the connection fee into one sewer connection fee. And we did calculate different components for the wastewater treatment facility and the conveyance system improvements. Basically, because with the conveyance system, you have a number of improvements that are needed to expand system capacity to serve future growth. And then on the wastewater treatment facility side, you're not really expanding the capacity because, as I said, you do have quite a bit of excess capacity right now. But there is a substantial amount of improvements that need to be done just to replace and upgrade everything. So on that piece of it, we took more of a buy-in approach where we looked at the total amount that you have invested in wastewater treatment facilities divided by the total number of single-family equivalents that you can serve. So, and we're also proposing that this be changed from an RAU basis to a meter size basis, just to make it easier. It's very straightforward and simple then to say, okay, this is the meter size that's going in, so this is the fee that would be charged. And then on the water side, as we said, we can't do a connection fee for water, so we were looking at this as an impact fee and replacing the existing water impact fee with something that, again, is based on a meter size, very simple and straightforward to administer. So we did roll in the remaining costs for those projects from the last impact fee study that haven't been collected yet, as well as some future recommended wells and storage and some additional pumping capacity throughout the system. And then with all of these fees, we would recommend that they be charged to any new connection to the water and sewer system citywide, rather than be limited to a specific area, both because the facilities will benefit the entire service area and because it's much simpler to administer in that regard. We would also recommend that these fees be applied to connections that have a change in use that requires a larger water meter. So this could be something like if you have a property in the downtown area that redevelops into a more intense use, or really anywhere throughout the city, if there's a change in use that requires a larger meter, that these fees would apply. And the fee would basically be the difference between the fee for the meter size that they're going to minus the fee for the meter size that they previously had. On the water side, since it is an impact fee, those would have to be segregated and applied to the projects listed in the study. So that'll have to be monitored by staff as we go along. And if there's a major change in what those facilities are, then that would warrant a change in the study itself. And then for sewer impact fees, like I said before, there's no requirements to keep those segregated. So those could basically be applied to any capital costs that you have. And then this chart shows the sum total of these types of fees for single-family homes under your current fee structure versus what we're recommending. In addition to the ones we're talking about tonight, you also have a storm sewer impact fee and a park impact fee. So with the changes, you see the water impact fee being decreased. The total for the sewer would go up a little bit. But in total, we're recommending almost a $100 decrease in the fee per single-family home. So if you want to move forward with these changes, then the next steps on this would have us draft some revisions to the city ordinances. So that would be section 198-10, your sewer service charges, and then section 254-12, impact fees. And the impact fee ordinance really does need to be updated just in general for a number of other things that have changed in state statutes since that was last revised. And then there would be a requirement for a public hearing on the water impact fee ordinance, with the water impact fee study being available for public review 20 days before the hearing. On the sewer connection fee side, there's no requirement for a public hearing. So any questions on this piece of it before we're moving on to the sewer rates? All right. Okay, so let's touch on the sewer rates next. So with the sewer rates, the big impetus for this study is that the sewer utility has a pretty significant amount of capital improvements needed over the next 5 years. So the biggest one of that is obviously the wastewater treatment facility improvements. And then we also, in the next 5-year projection, included the Highway 35 and 2nd Street sewer replacement project, a new jet truck at $450,000, and then looking at past history of what other miscellaneous replacements and rehabilitation projects, plus a little bit of inflation, we're building in about $485,000 per year for other miscellaneous projects. And in order to obtain a clean water fund loan for the wastewater treatment facility project, the utility will have to show that it has enough revenues to pay for at least 110% of annual debt service. So that debt service is projected to start in 2022. Well, there'll be some interest charges next year, but the full amount won't be until 2022. We're estimating that'll be about $792,000 a year, and then with that additional 10% coverage, it's about $871,000. In discussions with your city staff, the plan is to close on that loan this fall sometime, and so the city will have to take some action to adopt a schedule of rates by the time you close on that loan. They don't actually have to take effect immediately. You just need to have them in a place by the time you have to start paying the debt service. So as part of this study, we did talk about a number of options with city staff for how to fund these various capital improvements. And the utility does have pretty substantial reserves at this time. So there was some discussion about whether to use those for the wastewater treatment facility project versus some of the other things that are coming up. Ultimately, since the interest rate for the Clean Water Fund loan is only 1.76%, it seems to make sense to borrow for that project and fund some of these other projects out of reserves and annual revenues. So this kind of shows a breakdown of those funding sources. The biggest thing would be the loan from the Clean Water Fund for the treatment plant project. And then you also have a sewer collection replacement fund. That's that dark blue wedge there with about 1.2 million balance at this point. So a good share of that would be used to fund that Highway 35 and 2nd Street project. And then we're proposing to spend down the utilities reserves a bit to fund some of these projects, and then the remainder would have to come from annual revenues, as well as the debt service on that Clean Water Fund loan. So just looking at what the average cash needs of the utility have been in the past 5 years versus what we're looking at by 2022, you can see there's been a pretty substantial increase. And some of that's operation and maintenance costs. We're assuming a little bit of inflation in there, but the biggest piece of that is debt service. So over the last 5 years, your average debt service was about $170,000 a year, and actually the debt for the last treatment plant project was paid off in 2018, so you haven't had any last year or this year, versus that $792,000 that we're talking about with the new treatment plant projects. And this shows what we're proposing as far as how much of that, roughly almost $3.2 million per year of cash needs would come from. So you've got in lighter blue, that's your user charge revenues, which is the bulk of your revenues for the sewer utility. And then you've got a little bit of other revenues from things like late fees, interest income, and some connection fee revenues. So to be on the conservative side, we're projecting that other revenues would decrease a bit from where it's been the last few years. And then the rate increase itself would be roughly, I have this number here. It's about 46.5% or over $900,000 per year that we need to increase the sewer user charge revenue portion. So we did prepare several alternatives and discuss these at length with city staff. We have the no rate increase or the do nothing approach, which you'll see is not really feasible. We had initially talked about doing the entire rate increase effective January of 2021. Given present circumstances and the fact that you don't really need the full rate increase until 2022, we also looked at some scenarios for phasing that in. So this shows the do-nothing approach, no rate increase. The red line is your cash reserve levels. The dashed green line is the recommended minimum amount of reserves. The purple line is total revenues, and then the blue line is cash flow. And the recommended reserves were based on 3 months of operating reserve, 3 months worth of operating expenses as an operating reserve, $500,000 for unanticipated capital, a debt service reserve equal to 1 year's payment, and then an equipment replacement fund, which is required by the DNR for replacing mechanical equipment. So then the next scenario that we looked at was putting in place a rate increase in 2021, and then going forward, we're not showing any rate increases in the future here. So that would be a pretty steep one-time rate increase. And again, you don't need it immediately for 2021. So you maintain your reserves for quite a bit longer, but then eventually with no rate increases, your reserves would probably start to decline over time. You'll see on here that there's kind of a big jump here after 2040. So the debt service for this project will be paid off around that time. So if you didn't have any other major projects in the next 20 years, your reserve levels will start to climb pretty quickly. Probably by that time, you'll be looking at some other major projects. So that's way out there in the future. The next scenario that we looked at was doing 38% in 2021 and another 11% in 2022. And that would get you most of the way to where you need to be as far as the debt service on the loan already for 2021. And then the remainder of that would be to provide a little bit of cushion and also to provide more cash funding for other capital projects. As you can see with this one, you are pulling down the reserve levels from where they were as of end of 2019, kind of gradually, but still remaining above the recommended, a little bit above the recommended. Then we flipped that one and said, what if you just did 11% in 2021 and the other 38% in 2022? And with this one, you'll see you do draw down the reserves quite a bit more quickly, just because you've got some big projects coming up in the next couple of years. I also forgot to mention, but in these phased-in rate scenarios, we're including every other year 2% rate increases in 2024, 2026, and 2028. With the understanding that those will have to be monitored because there's just a lot of assumptions built into this about customer demand and expenses and things that may or may not play out exactly as we're showing here. So with this one, if you delay the big rate increase, like I said, it does draw down the reserves quite a bit more, and you may be in a situation where you want to do bigger rate increases after 2026 or so. And then the last one we looked at was just kind of taking that rate increase and breaking it in half and doing half now and half in 2022. So that's what this one looks like. And so we also looked at kind of where you are in comparison to other communities in the area with the full recommended rate increase for 2022. So regardless of how you get there, this is what we're recommending you have in place for rates by 2022. And you can see right now you're near the bottom of the list as far as the average annual bill for your residential customers. With the two proposed rate increases, that would increase those costs by about $81 a year, or about $679 per month, and you'd still be well below the average for the area. And again, this is a couple years out, so I would expect probably some of these other communities will have raised rates, in the meantime as well. So it'll still be very affordable compared to other communities. So I guess the issue we're looking for direction on with this one is, the preferred approach for phasing in the rate increase in terms of how you want to split that up between 2021 and 2022. And then the next steps would be to draft some amendments to Section 198-10 to implement the proposed rates. Are there any questions on this portion at this point?
Anybody?
Okay. All right. I'm going to turn it over to Eric then for the next portion of this, and he's going to talk about the water rates because he was a little more involved in that portion of it. So I will mute myself here.
Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So regarding the water rates, just a brief background. The application to increase the water rates was filed on September 27th of last year with an overall increase of 10.9%. And the impetus behind this was it was part of the rate order in the last rate case that was in 2017. During that rate case, rates were separated into these three groups where they have different rates. So residential and multifamily has one rate. Commercial, industrial, and public authority is charged under a separate rate, and then irrigation is charged under a higher rate. And as part of that rate order, the utility was required to file another rate case in 2 years. So that's why the timing on that. And for what we're focusing in on today is the rate structure and how things are balanced between the different groups of rates as well as the fixed charge versus the volume charges. So we were hired to go through analyze the current rate structure and see if there's any other options for revising the rates now, make things more equitable and fair for the different types of customers. Oh, do you want to go to the next slide?
Yep.
Okay, and what we're showing here is we are proposing to make a few adjustments in how the costs are allocated amongst the various customer classes. And what we're showing right here is the main big adjustment. And what these are is the peak demand ratios that are assigned to each of the different customer classes. You have the six different customer classes. And this is important because that different costs of the utility are assigned to peak demand. They're facilities that are designed to provide peak demand, daily and hourly demand. And those costs are apportioned based on the peak demand of each separate customer class. So if one class has a higher peak ratio than others, they will pay a higher share of those costs. And what we have done is we were able to retrieve and analyze some data from the new metering technology that is still being installed throughout the city. The AMI that's able to track hourly use. So we were able to get some of that new data and analyze it to a greater detail. And so we are proposing to decrease most of those peak day ratios and peak hour ratios that are assigned to each customer class. It appears based on the actual use that they should be lower, that their peak demand is not quite as high as what was assumed before. I would just like to add on this, there's a lot of things, so if one thing goes down, something else has to come up. There's one other portion of this that is not shown in this table, and that's fire protection. And that amount, there's an assumed amount of fire flow needed, to serve. And in that case, that has not changed. So the ultimate effect of making these adjustments is to shift some of the costs away from the individual customer classes and onto fire protection. And fire protection, those costs are recovered through the public and private fire protection charges that are on the quarterly bill. So I just want to run through a few example customers of what the impacts of we calculated out what rates would be using the exact same methodology as was used in the last rate case versus our revised methodology that we're proposing. And we wanted to get show you the whole picture because show it with the indoor water use and outdoor water use, since there are a number of customers that have the indoor and outdoor meters. Because obviously if the outdoor use goes up, then the indoor use goes down, and vice versa. If those rates, one goes up, the other has to come down. So this first example is showing a fairly high-use customer. You can see up there how much water, this is for the entire year. So how much water was used for 2019 indoors and outdoors. And so we're seeing in that that middle column, the current methodology, what the rates would be if we did not change anything, versus on the alternate methodology, what the rates would be under the proposed adjustments. So with this high-use customer, this would be the revised method would be better, and that's because the volumetric rates would be not go up quite as much versus the public fire protection charge. Can we go to the next one? The second example is actually ultimately pretty similar. Overall usage, they're about the same, but this customer has a more moderate indoor use versus higher outdoor use. But the impact is virtually the same on that. The revised methodology winds up being slightly better for them versus the current methodology. This third example, again, this is single-family residential house with the indoor and outdoor meters, and this is a lower use customer. So this is the indoor use is below average use, and then a very minimal amount of outdoor use. And this is where you see that impact flip. The revised methodology would be slightly higher than the current methodology. It's not a great dollar amount. It's less than $2 per quarter, but for these low use customers where they're not showing, using a lot of water, especially outdoors, that's where the alternate methodology will see a slightly higher increase in their quarterly bill. And then finally, I wanted to show one example. I know there are a number of homeowners associations that have shared outdoor use. The one example I'm showing here has quite a bit of outdoor use. So what I'm showing here, the table on the left here, that is the combined annual use and bill for the entire year for every irrigation meter that they have installed. And I think there's a number of them. There's 10 or 12 in this particular subdivision. And then on the right is just one customer within that. And assuming that shared use, that, as you can see, that $17,000 outdoor bill would be shared amongst all the properties in that subdivision. I believe there are about 300 units there. So as you can see then, when that gets portioned out to the different units, it becomes much smaller. But for this particular individual unit on the right, again, we see under the revised methodology, they would see a slightly lower increase in their quarterly bill versus using the current methodology that was used in the 2017 rate case. And then again, this is showing what the current and then proposed average annual residential water bill would be. This is using the revised methodology. And again, I have to point out, I must apologize. In the memo, there was one of these communities had the wrong rate in there that's in the memo, so that has been fixed under this one. It's New Richmond. But as you can see, right now the Hudson's rates are the lowest in the region, and they'd be being increased. It's still a fairly moderate increase to the average annual residential bill. Yeah, there wouldn't be that much of a difference if we use the current methodology, but with the revisions we're proposing, I think it's a more fair, equitable rate structure that reflects, the latest, detailed data that just wasn't available 3 years ago. So next steps, currently, working with the PSC staff to finalize the revenue requirements and the overall rate increase. That process is still going on. Once that is finalized, then we will file, our proposed cost of service study and rate schedule with the PSC, and then they will schedule a date for a telephonic hearing at a later time after that. Just to finish up with one more slide, just want to show you the regional comparison when you combine the sewer and the water bill together. And again, you see that those positions are still very, very reasonable and low in the surrounding region, combined water and sewer.
And New Richmond is in the process of increasing their water rates, so this does not reflect their.
Yes, New Richmond is also currently undergoing this process for their water rates. Was around a 23% increase, so yeah, that's not reflected in this chart.
I have questions.
Yep. Randy?
Couple of questions. When we did the 2017 rates, we, as council members, got a lot of pushback from our constituents. My concern is the perceived notion of raising things right now when everything is kind of up in the air due to the pandemic. But my other question is, if we had to do it, sewer, I would prefer to see either one of the two of the last examples that you shared. As far as water, that was the biggest pushback we had. And you are suggesting to go to 4 on the max day and a max hour of 850. Is it possible, in your opinion, can we do 3 max day and 650 max hour with the max hour going to 8 instead of 10?
I will look again at the data that we have received and see if there are any other, if there should be adjusted anymore.
Quite frankly, and I'll be honest, my reasoning is not to mention the feedback we got from our residents, but we have ordinances in place that demand that our residents keep their lawns looking good and in peace and good order. A lot of them have irrigation systems, and they felt that increase.
Right.
I mean, PSC sets the rates, so we can request different things to allow or not allow, and I know they will want to see the backup data that we have to justify all of this, and sometimes they're reluctant to approve something that isn't supported by a decent amount of data.
Right.
So it's driven by the data and what the actual water use looks like for these irrigation meters.
Yeah.
So, and then we did look at that and coming up with the numbers that you see there.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Joyce.
Would it be allowed to do billing where you even out the billing? So during the winter, somebody who's got a large irrigation bill would be able to pay extra, so that when they get to the larger bills that come out in September or so, that they would have money already in their account to help pay for that, to even things out like they do with the gas and the electric bills?
I believe they do have an option for that, for budget billing.
Yeah, I'll throw that to Allison if you want to weigh in on that.
Yeah, we don't currently have a budget billing set up, and I don't know the process to do that, but there's nothing stopping a customer from if they want to pay more at a set point of the year that we tell them they can't have a credit on their account. So if they knew that they were going to have a higher bill coming up, that they could pay more in the winter to keep it to carry forward. But we currently do not have it set up as budget billing. That's a whole nother process for averaging and than we currently get involved with.
Yeah, I know it would mean a big adjustment for the billing system, but yeah, and I have heard the complaints about the large irrigation bills, and it looks like the bills are going to be pretty similar, whether they're because we're going to be changing the rates anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a lot to try and change.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're getting into balancing out for the final quarter and trying to figure out whether they owe, whether they have overpayments. There are big bills with irrigation. I know them personally, and I know when at Stillwater we had customers that did on their own set up. They knew how much they averaged a year, and they would send in monthly payments, and some sent in what they figured the average was, and then they caught up. But
okay,
yeah,
so we could encourage something like that without having a formal billing system doing that.
Correct.
Okay.
Christine, could you explain just quick the difference with water and sewer as far as the PSC and the water, that they require increases based on our operational costs? So that's,
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of control over that.
The PSC regulates water rates down to, all the minutia. Right now, they're combing through the application that was submitted by the city and looking at and asking lots of questions about all of your operating expenses and so on. And so they do get into a lot of details on this, and they are the final say as far as what those rates are. And they have a very, relatively fixed method out. And so they look at, as Derek touched on, they look at every line item of your budget and your capital improvements, and they assign each cost, some of that to kind of base charges based on average daily demand, and then some of it to maximum day factors, and then also some to maximum hour and storage. And so they go through all that, and they have a very fixed approach, and that's really based on just on data as far as how your system operates, like overall, what's the maximum daily use for customer class, what is the estimated or actual ratio of maximum daily use to average daily use, and peak hourly use to average daily use. And so they really take a very detailed approach based on what your utilities cost structure is and what your customers' usage looks like. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, I mean, it's a pretty fixed, rigid type of approach versus on the sewer side, where you can take a lot of different approaches to how you determine those rates.
But basically what you're saying is that no matter what it is, PSC looks at our numbers, looks at the study, and they will say what the rate increase is going to be ultimately.
Yeah. It has to be based on data from your system. So.
Yeah, but under their process, I mean, anyone has an opportunity to comment during the rate case process. So if that is an option.
Yeah, and like I said, we can submit something that come and do plan to coming from the city to say this is what our proposal is, and what we presented to you tonight we do think is something that they will accept and will approve. But there's limited room in there to change things up.
Because I think the conversation has been, it's honestly the past rate increase. It was that large increase in irrigation that wasn't expected by the associations, although, I've seen the data, what was put out there and everything. I mean, it was out there, but it doesn't mean that those associations, especially the ones that were the actual, like the association boards, not the owners, not the management company or whatever, but the homeowners, they weren't expecting it necessarily, a lot of them. And so when it came, it was a huge, huge surprise. But, again, even looking back then, PSC was going to review that, and they were going to make their rate decision anyways. So, I mean, it's not like we can go to PSC now and say, we just want to get rid of irrigation rates. Let's just get rid of those. All they're going to say is fine, and we're jacking everybody else's rates up the same anyways. So all you're gonna see is your homeowners, who are part of these associations, paying more to make up that difference of getting rid of the irrigation fees. So I think that's the issue, is that they just weren't expecting it. And again, I don't blame staff for that at that time, because it was out there. I just think the communication between a lot of times these management companies or the owners and then the actual homeowners and the association that run them, they weren't getting the same information, or they weren't getting it until too late when they see those bills, and then they got to figure out what to do with their association fees and pay for them and stuff. So I think that's kind of where that concern goes. But like I said, even if we wanted to just say, fine, let's just get rid of the irrigation, all they're going to do is jack up those same homeowners' bills to make up that difference then. So, you know, we're kind of where we are with it, really. And there's not much we have control over with the water side.
That's really too bad that it works out like that. Because there are people that are feeling that impact all around the city.
Okay. Well, and the hard part with the rates too, though, is, I mean, we have a certain amount of expenses, and our rates have to be self-supporting to meet those expense needs. And so whether it's irrigation's paying this share, or the homeowners are paying a higher share, or your commercial, or, you know, somebody's got to get to that number. You have a number you have to get to. It's just how do you kind of get there? And our last billing, the big change is that we went to these irrigation rates, where in the past it had been the more water you use, the less you pay. But then that got switched over. Now we have the irrigation meters, and we're tracking it that way. And then it was actually paying for the true amount of water you're really using and what that cost is. So it just shifted the revenue from where it kind of was before, but we still have to ultimately get to that same expense number to meet. So in a situation like this, you know, this mitigates the increase to those irrigation rates this time around, but it doesn't address the huge increase from last time at all.
Well, we could offset it by pushing it off to a commercial or a public authority, a certain percentage.
I'm sure, yeah, I mean, you could look at increasing somebody else's rates to cover that. Yep, I'm sure that, unless I'm missing something, that we can't do that. I'm looking at somebody out there.
Yeah, you don't really have too much of an option to do that, because, you know, PSC looks at what they call your cost to serve each customer class, and they do expect you, you know, they will set rates so that they're close to recovering the appropriate amount from each class. So, you know, you have a little bit of wiggle room there maybe, but they're going to expect and require that the rates be, you know, appropriated to each class based on how they're using water. So I don't know that there's really a possibility to do that.
So the rates are based on the maximum day ratio and the maximum hour ratio. That's what they really base the rates on. Is that correct?
Yes, for the volume, especially for the volume piece of it between the classes. Yeah, that's correct.
Yep.
I have a question. This is Bill Ohms, District 2 representative. Irrigation rates assumes a second meter within a home, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So there are potentially people irrigating using the other sewer rates, or using the regular water sewer rates. What's the difference when it's all boiled down? What's the difference in price?
2 bills.
To that customer? If you're using a set amount for irrigation, but you're actually using water and sewer water versus irrigation water?
You're asking, so if somebody doesn't have that irrigation meter, then they're paying maybe a lower rate for the water, but then they're also paying for the sewer for that use as well?
But in total, is it less expensive, the water and sewer versus irrigation?
We looked at that. I want to make sure that our numbers are still accurate. But we did look at that, and it's actually pretty similar. It is a bit cheaper to, and I want to make sure I have the right numbers here.
And it depends, the answer to that question too partly depends on how much water somebody's using.
Overall, understood.
Yeah, I mean, because when you
Right.
have that second irrigation meter, then you've got to pay an additional service charge for that meter too. So if you have one and you're not using very much water through it, then it might not be worth it, but
Got it.
I think Eric had said, generally speaking, yes, they'd be better off to have the irrigation meter.
Gotcha. Because I think that's what's going through a lot of our residents' minds, right? Not everybody has a second meter for irrigation. Now irrigation rates go up. You know, is that a choice that they will make? And getting back to Aaron's point about the end number is the goal. I'm concerned that, you know, does that end number decrease because of the rates that we changed on irrigation, because of the choices that the residents are making? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other thing I just want to point out too to keep in mind is that, so we're talking about a pretty substantial increase in the sewer rate. But on with the proposal that you saw tonight on the water side of things, the percentage increase in the irrigation rate is very small. And I don't recall the number offhand, but I think it was less than, considerably less than the average rate increase. We said earlier that the overall is about 10.9 for the water, and the irrigation.
Right. The irrigation is 3.9% increase versus the 10.9 overall.
Yeah.
From 2017, right?
Right.
Yes.
And I think I'm thinking about the rate increase that happened in 2017.
Oh, okay.
And the effect happening from that versus this most recent rate increase.
Okay.
But I echo Randy's sentiment. I mean, is there, you know, another way we can sort of jockey around to get to that number? So.
Yeah, I think we're looking at, you know, any further adjustments were, you know, really in the margins, to get back to like where it was before. That's not really you'd have to jack up the rates and everyone else. I think I looked at that and it was over 50%.
A 50% rate increase in the other rates?
Yeah,
Okay.
right. So, what we're looking at is more, margins. How can we make this, improve this, and make it fair based on, you know, PSC methodology and the actual, you know, more recent data that we have available.
Yeah, and Aaron, you touched on this, but yeah, before 2017, those irrigation customers were paying on that declining block structure. So as you use more water, the rate per CCF went down. So if they were big high volume users during the summer months, they were paying very little for that water. And that's kind of the exact opposite of the PSC's approach to things, where if they have a customer that's placing heavy peak demands during certain times of the year, and honestly during the time of the year when your demands are already higher on your system, you know, that plays into you having to have more well capacity, more storage capacity, and so on. So they want to see those customers paying more than other customers that have more steady water use. So, you know, it's unfortunate that did lead to a big increase all at once for some of those customers, but to have, you know, that would be kind of against the whole philosophy of the Public Service Commission to go back to a system like what you had, or even to, you know, back off of it too much from what we're looking at.
I have one more question about irrigation. You went over the commercial numbers. Is irrigation broken out for commercial users when they're using for irrigation?
All the irrigation users are charged the same rate. So whether it's irrigation for residential, irrigation for commercial, you know, for public authority, they're all changed that same irrigation rate.
Gotcha. And I was referring to a slide, and it was before the slide that I'm seeing on my computer right now, where it was just the commercial rate, and I was just curious if irrigation was baked into that. Because I see your focus on the irrigation breakout is on residential. Yeah, there we are.
This one, yeah, okay.
Right, so all these are the demand ratios here. So yeah, the irrigation includes irrigation for, like I said, all the residential or commercial industrial, so that what's remaining is those not, so like the commercial is showing it's all the non-irrigation commercial properties. Meters.
Got it.
Everybody good? Excellent. Thank you very much for the presentation. Appreciate it. Sure, we look forward to working on this in the future.
So yeah, basically next meeting we'll bring forward everything that was discussed, and the only thing that, honestly, the only really decision point that the council will have to make at next meeting is what they want to do with the sewer rates. And that's the one where the options were laid out, as far as doing the bid jump of 38%, next year, and then 11 and 22, or reversing that, 11 next year, 38 and 22, or splitting the difference, 23.7 next year and staying in 2022. So we'll have the ordinance updated and ready, and we'll just have that one section blank that we'll fill in after the council decides what they want to do with it. I know it's a lot to take in tonight, so you'll be able to think about that and decide next meeting kind of how you want to address that sewer one. Otherwise, the other ones are fairly straightforward, especially considering the impact fees go down. That one's a little easier to approve, and then the water one again is more just to send the data to the PSC and see what they end up doing with it. So, but we'll have that all ready for the next agenda.
Okay, thanks.
Aaron, I've got a question. Randy mentioned that we have ordinances on the books for maintaining lawns. Could you look those up for us and send out some more information on that?
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Moving into public hearings. Public hearing regarding 2020 sidewalk replacement project. This is your opportunity to speak on this subject if you are tuning in order to do that. We have a couple people here that are in person. I don't know if they're here for this or not, but for the people that are on Zoom that would like to make a comment, please unmute. We don't have pictures up for everybody that is tuning in, so don't raise your hand, just chime on in, identify yourself, and let us know what you have to say. So once again, public hearing regarding 2020 sidewalk replacement project. Is there anyone that has a comment? Is there anyone that has a comment? Is there anyone that has a comment?
Move to close.
Second.
We got a motion, second to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Public hearing is closed. Discussion, possible action on Resolution 13-20 adopting special assessments on the 2020 sidewalk replacement project.
Move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion, second to suspend the rules. Roll call.
Morissette,
Yes.
Alms,
Yes.
DeZiel,
Yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Atkins Hoggett, and Hall.
Yes.
Motion's approved. Rules are suspended.
Move to adopt Resolution 13-20.
Second.
Motion second to adopt. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Comments and suggestions from citizens present. Okay, this is the public comment area on any topic that somebody may want to or wish to express their opinion. Same thing goes on this. If you have, if you are watching via Zoom, please unmute, hop right on in, identify yourself, and tell us what it is you wanted to talk about. Does anybody have a comment? Anybody have a comment? Anybody have a comment? All right, we'll close that portion of the agenda. Consent. Hour and 15 minutes into the meeting.
Approve the meeting minutes from the June 1st, 2020 regular council meeting.
Would you pull that? I've got a correction.
Okay. Where am I? Approve the claims in the amount of $944,218.27. Approve car light show on the Dyke Road in Lakefront Park, June 20th, 2020.
Could you just pull that, Becky?
Which one was that?
Who pulled that?
I think Jim and I both did.
Okay. Approve annual renewal liquor license applications listed on the issue sheet. Approve operator's license on the list sheet. Approval of Ziggy's 302 2nd Street temporary extension of premise permit.
Can you pull that?
You owe me a buck, Catherine.
Approve the letter of engagement with Bolton and Menck in the amount of $38,080 for the 2020 mill and overlay projects on Industrial Street and Stage Line Road. Approve the letter of engagement with Bolton and Menck in the amount of $85,400 for Carmichael Road and Vine Street improvements related to the Bella Rose development. Approve the proposal submitted by Cedar Corp in the amount of $14,975 for the Public Works Facilities Assessment. Approve the recommendation of Park Board to open the beach at Lakefront Park without lifeguards for the 2020 season.
Would you please pull that?
Approval. Approval of the request by Hill City Church to use Lakefront Park on June 21st and June 28th. Approve fee for short-term home rental licenses.
Can you pull that one?
Approve a fence. Approve a fence permit application to allow Neo Electrical Solutions to construct an 8-foot tall security fence on their property at 2180 Jack Ralt Drive. And approve setting a public hearing date of August 17th, 2020 for amendments to a municipal sign code chapter 202-6C and 202-6E.
Move to approve the ones that are still on the consent agenda, the few that are there.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with the exceptions of items A, C, F, J, and L. Everybody good? Roll call?
Morissette?
Yes.
Alms?
Yes.
DeZiel?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Atkins Hoggett?
Yes.
And Hall.
Yes.
Motion's approved. Item A, Joyce.
Yeah, I gotta find the, okay, so on page 3 of the draft, under regarding Hill City Church services, DeZiel made a motion to approve as services listed, seconded by Alms. Hall amended the motion to approve with any guidelines that staff recommends. I can't amend a motion, so Hall made the recommendation to approve the, or to change the motion.
Got that,
Say that
Becky?
again.
I got it back outside.
Okay, thank you.
Do we need to?
All right, move to approve with the change.
Second.
Okay. Motion, is there a second?
Yes.
Yeah, Paul seconded it.
A motion and a second to approve minutes with the recommended change. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion's approved. Item C, approved car light show on the Dyke Road in Lakefront Park, June 20th, 2020.
Go ahead, Paul.
Go ahead, Jim, you can go first.
Okay, I guess my concern in looking at this is the time from 8 to 11. The 11's probably not so bad, but 8 o'clock, there's a lot, it's a pretty heavy pedestrian thing, and I can't imagine 30 cars moving out there in a safe manner. So I guess I have a lot of concern about how you're going to manage traffic of having both cars and people on that relatively narrow roadway, and which is primarily a pathway for walking. And I don't see much I don't see anything in the application that relates to that.
I would echo that, Jim. I thought the application just wasn't well thought out. There was a lot of questions that were just, we don't need this. And it's not a bad idea, I think, to have a car show. I think it sounds kind of interesting. But I think we should go back to the person that's requesting this and just say, can you think through this a little bit more? And maybe move the location, kind of what Jim's talking about. Maybe if we move the location to, the parking lot at the beach house or something, off of the Dyke Road, I think that's a better possibility. But I would like to see this one sent back to the person that wrote it and just try to clarify it with city staff to see if it's more workable than it is in the form we got.
Chief?
We got an email from, or at least I did, I think everybody got an email from the young man who is organizing this, and I sent him an email back suggesting that he contact Paul Rohde and ask Paul for some suggestions, because Paul has been doing a bunch of different parades and things like that, and that he would have some suggestions. And I contacted Paul to make sure that it was all right to recommend that, and he said yes, he and his team would be very happy to help with this. So that might be part of the recommendation, would be that he get some additional assistance to make sure that those kinds of things are well thought out.
And I think they need to be talking to the chief of police as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the public safety piece wasn't really addressed at all in the application. So.
Chief is here waiting to make a comment.
Well, I think the applicant is here as well.
Pardon me?
I think the applicant is here as well.
Okay. I didn't realize that.
Jeff, do you have concerns? Can you take that off so I can hear you, if possible?
Sure.
Do you have concerns with this issue?
I have a little bit of a concern of the location on the Dyke Road. But other than that, I don't have any giant concerns about what is proposed.
So if we switched it to the lakefront beach lot, you'd be okay with it?
Well, sure, but the problem that we're going to run into is that it's a weekend in downtown Hudson, and parking is a premium, right? So, that's the problem that we're going to run into.
So
where are we gonna put them?
Do you see a problem with a safety problem that Paul and Jim are expressing with moving the vehicles out there at that time of night?
I agree, it is pretty busy at 8 o'clock at night, but with a little of assistance, I think we could make it happen pretty safely.
So, Jim and Paul, what do you think of and I don't know, obviously we haven't talked to the applicant about that, but he is here, I guess, so what do you think about a weeknight?
Well, I think by having it on the Dyke Road, we've significantly reduced the space that's available, and so the ability of people to walk out there and maintain social distance has been eliminated. So I think that's a serious issue for our public facilities, public areas.
When this first came to us, I don't remember exactly who all weighed in on this, but we thought it was a good idea, a good use of the Dyke Road, because we have this great resource, and other than pedestrian traffic, it's really not used for anything. And we thought it was the original conversations was we thought it was a good idea to at least give it a try, to see how that worked and maybe spur some other interest and some other ideas, some more creative ideas on how to use our Dyke Road. Maybe people's opinion of that has changed, but I still kind of like the idea.
I do too.
I think it is creative, and I think that's it's a great use of the Dyke Road. It might impede some of the pedestrian traffic for one night, but as Chief pointed out, at least they're not taking up all the parking downtown.
Yeah, I think if it was not during COVID-19, I might agree with that. But I think right now we're living in times where the social distancing is really, really important. And I think it's just not wide enough to do a car show and have people going back and forth and bike traffic. So I think Jim's concerned about, I just don't think it's a good location for it right now. Maybe in a year, right? If COVID rescinds, I would definitely relook at that.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the logistics, and the drivers would be coming out onto the Dike Road. They would all line up on one side of it, but then at the end, they would be all coming back. They'd have to turn around and, in order to, and then return, and so they'd be passing each other. Then there would not be any room on the Dike Road for pedestrians at that time.
Well, they'd be leaving the Dike Road when the park closes.
Park is closed at 10 o'clock,
Yeah, so,
so there shouldn't be any pedestrian traffic out there after 10 o'clock.
Okay.
There always is, but there shouldn't be.
that's true.
I think the other location that they might consider is just off of the Walnut Street area there, where they've had car shows a number of times. That might be a better location for that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we should send it back to the applicant and have city staff maybe work with them to come up with a more refined proposal and then look at it again.
All right, so why don't we, if it's going to get sent back, and I don't know that,
You can send it back to public safety.
you can go to public safety, is that where you want it?
That's
Public safety, okay? Seeing as how that's what the concerns are, I guess, is safety. All right, so we'll shoot it back to public safety. We've got the applicant here. Why don't you come on up and tell us a little bit about what you're thinking about, and maybe you've got some questions here too.
So my main...
Again, identify yourself and address, please.
Yep. So my name is Nick Jantz. I'm a senior at Hudson High School, and I'm here on the car issue. So my one idea with it is it doesn't really have to start at 8. I was just putting that time out there just to have a time. I mean, we could even start at 9, 9:30, and go to 11. And I was thinking about that 11 o'clock since it closes at 10. So we wouldn't have that many people out there, and we wouldn't have to worry about the safety and the distance. Like you said, we will still have to watch our 6 feet, wear a mask in public. But if you have any concerns about that, I can talk to Paul, and I can talk to a few others about that issue. So that's kind of my idea about that.
Anybody got any questions?
Did you contact Paul Rohde about this?
I did. I talked to him,
Okay.
and the other thing was I was hoping to maybe do like a local charity as well. So if people wanted to donate a few bucks here or there, that'd be perfect too. That's another idea I talked to him about.
And Nick, I want to encourage you. I think it's a super cool idea, and I think it's just something that if you continue to work with the city staff, we can probably figure out a way to make it work. So I want you to feel hopeful that there's maybe a way to do this if we make some adjustments in the plan.
Yeah, and the 20th is not like set in stone. tried to get this in earlier, but with all the COVID and just the stuff happening over in Minneapolis, it kind of got pushed out. So I've been kind of talking to some friends, and we're trying to figure out a better date than the 20th. And I was emailing the chief of police and the mayor here, so I will try and figure out just a better date and maybe a better time stamp as well.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, Nick, thank you. Randy is the chair of the Public Safety Committee. He'll be in touch with you and let you know when the meeting's going to be.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for being here. Let's see, what item was that? C? Item F.
Oh, that was mine. I just wanted to, for the record, point out that I think they have a solid 12 parking spaces in that lot. And it's my understanding, based on the material in the packet, that all of them will be, being used for their customers, sitting and music. And so losing those 12 spots is pretty significant at some times of the day. I think nighttime is probably going to be all right, but when they have concerts and using up those 12 spaces. That's a pretty significant loss to already troubled lack of good parking available to the rest of us. But I'm not against it. I just wanted to maybe point out that 12 is a lot of spaces for us to give up. But
From what I've seen from the first week of it, they weren't doing it until like the weekend. So like I think Friday, Saturday, whatever, and they were generally, it looked like they weren't setting up until like late afternoon. So it wasn't all the time. It was during the week they're not set up at all. But then like I think after we approved it, I saw them go up. I think Friday maybe at about I left work, so 4:30 or so. They were just setting it up with the gates and stuff. So I'm not sure if they left it up all day Saturday or not, or if they took it down for the day and put it up at night, but I know that it's not just up all the time. They do take it down, especially all week they have it down.
very good. So I'd move to approve their temporary extension of premise permit.
Second.
Motion and second to approve. Discussion?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think it's a really good idea because it wasn't the whole big picture, as we wanted to encourage businesses to get outside just for safety sort of during this time period. So I'm really pleased with Ziggy going for using the lot to do that.
Agreed.
Okay.
But I think the loss of 12 parking spaces is actually very significant.
Private
As
parking.
much as issue as this has been for the last several years, I can't imagine why we would allow someone to do this.
It's private parking.
But it was probably required when they went into business.
Part of the whole proposal with this
Just
also,
require
don't
that
forget,
additional
was,
parking spaces.
I mean, you're seeing other cities where they're shutting down on-street parking to allow for this expansion part. So it's this trade-off of, I think, as Paul said, the ability to get these businesses to still have people come in and use their business, but do it in a safer way, which is getting them outside instead of inside. So we do have to have a trade-off with it, and that's really our only trade-off we can do at this point is parking. We don't have a whole lot of other free spaces that these businesses can use. So my expectation is we haven't seen a lot of requests. This is it. Actually, I think we got one more today that we'll look at next meeting. But when you see these, they're probably going to be parking. That's what's available, and it's true that it does. I think it does impact our parking, but it's the trade-off of trying to be a little safer of getting the people outside versus jammed inside these businesses.
Anybody else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion's approved. Item
Who
J.
made that motion? I didn't catch that. Who made that motion?
It was
That
Sarah.
was me, Sarah.
Okay. And who was nay?
Jim.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Item J, approve the recommendation of the park board to open the beach at Lakefront Park without lifeguards for the 2020 season.
Okay, I asked to have that pulled. I just want to hear more from the Public Works Committee on, or wait, no, that was the park. So, Paul DeZiel.
Yeah. So right now, that's essentially what is happening presently. There's no lifeguard in place. The thinking behind it from Mike Moraz was a lot of the lifeguards that we have hired in past years are fairly young. We're talking maybe like high school age or young college kids. Mike doesn't want to put them in the position of having them enforce social distancing. For people that might be, twice their age or whatnot, it's a very awkward position to be in. In addition to that, it seems to be working pretty well right now. I've been to the beach a few times, brought my kids down there, and people are in different areas, and parents are watching their children and whatnot. And then the third point, as I recall, was, and Catherine can speak to this probably better than I can, but there is legal protection for the city if you post signs And I guess Catherine will know the details more, but that was presented at the park board as well. So it's not putting the city in more liability as part of it. And we're kind of coping with the best we can, sort of again, given the COVID-19 world that we're living in.
Well, I'll tell you.
Oh, I was just going to ask, is it too late to hire lifeguards at this point? Because I would expect that most of them have already found jobs if they're looking for one.
I don't know.
I would say probably yes. That would be an issue.
Just for the record, I will tell you that we have discussed this over the many years, and the same topic has come up when budget was tight, and we erred on the side of caution and hired the folks anyways, because almost every summer we have someone drowned out there, not necessarily at the beach, but out on the dike or elsewhere. So I don't care about immunity. I don't care about what some of the other folks say about not having them there. For the record, I would be in favor of putting them there, because I don't want to be the person on the council that is here when someone passes from a drowning because we decided not to because of something I think is a bit of a stretch. Just my thought.
And I actually don't see the lifeguards doing social distancing regulation. I don't think that's within our purview. It's a recommendation that we have. It's not a requirement. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
So we would not have them making any sort of suggestions like that. If it got out of control, then they would call the police, but other than that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I would see them calling the police too.
Randy.
How many lifeguards would we need to hire, and what hours have they traditionally been there?
So, Miraz is coming up.
Mike Miraz, Director of Public Works. So we typically hire between 4 and 6 lifeguards for a season and rotate a schedule. Beach is open typically in the afternoon, starting around 1 o'clock until 6 o'clock. You know, people still use the beach outside of those hours, so it is not lifeguarded 12 hours a day when the sun's up. So there are still users after and before when the lifeguards are actually present. So it just does give some families opportunities if they want to have protection of a lifeguard to utilize the beach in the afternoon. So, yeah, any questions? Any other questions?
How many lifeguards are usually on duty at one time?
2.
2? Okay.
Then we kind of have a head lifeguard that will pop in and out and then rotate through the schedule. So at sometimes there are 3, but typically 2.
Do you think that there are lifeguards that are still looking for a job at this point?
We can certainly, if it's that's what the council wants me to do, I can certainly put an ad in the paper this week and see what we get.
Can't hurt.
Yeah, I agree with Randy and Jim. I think that we do need to have lifeguards at the beach.
May I comment? If we can't find anyone due to worker shortage, would we circle back to this? Would we circle back to this then and decide whether or not we're going to close if we don't have a lifeguard, are we going to close the swimming area? We can't find workers?
So what I would say is, if the council wants to advertise, let's advertise. Let's keep it as is for now. We'll advertise, and then we'll bring it back next meeting and let you know what we got.
Okay, sounds good.
Then you can decide that.
So no action.
What's that?
No action?
I would say no action tonight, other than do the direction that they go advertise.
Yes, right.
Okay, I'll make the motion that we advertise for lifeguards.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Item L, approve fee for short-term home rentals licenses.
I pulled that. I just had a question for staff of why it looks to me like most of these other communities do also charge an annual fee. And I think the proposal is that we just have an application fee at startup without an annual fee to keep track of who's actively renting and who's not. So I just wondered if they could explain that proposal rather than having an annual fee as well as the installation fee.
This is our first step in it. I think it's a good question. I think the intent was to have it be annual, $250 annually. Like I said, this is our first time looking at something like this. Obviously, a lot of work went into that ordinance. We looked at a lot of our peer communities. I think moving forward that it should be a $250 annual or license fee.
Are we charging a license fee for a bed and breakfast right now?
So with that last code change is we eliminated the definition of a bed and breakfast, so they all kind of fall under the same category. So everybody pays the same. So a bed and breakfast would pay the $250 and the same as a short-term rental or an Airbnb.
What was the historic fee for the bed and breakfast licensing?
Yeah.
It was a conditional use permit application, so I want to say that's around $500. You could, but those last for at least 3 years generally. Sometimes there's no renewal, but you know it's different.
Oh, okay. And does each one have to have an annual inspection by the building inspector and the fire inspector?
I defer to David on that. I don't want to. I think it does. Kathy, are you there?
I think it is an annual renewal, so that they do have to come in and get a license every year.
Which would then trigger the inspections.
The inspection.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so I must have just misread this. I didn't see an annual fee anywhere. I just saw the license application.
Okay.
I would move to approve the $250 per year.
I'll second.
Motion and second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. We done with the consent agenda? Discussion and possible action on hosting fireworks at Lakefront Park on July 5th, 2020.
So we talked about this last meeting. Staff went out. We took a look at, just try to get an idea of, what could we really fit in this area, in the parks. If we try to keep the 6 foot social distancing, we included a couple maps in the packet. The blue dots represent the 10-foot diagonal circles, and they're all 6 feet apart now. I want to clarify, we don't want to put that many circles out there physically. It's really not feasible. That's a lot of circles. So what we would propose is, something to the effect of probably from like the Hudson sign, that area over to the beach, basically doing that area for sure with the circles. But then the other big chunk of the park, we'd probably just be looking at doing a lot of signage saying, please stay 6 feet apart, things like that. We could do all those circles, but that would be a lot of circles. And I would hope that's not necessary. And we'd also do the circles up in Prospect, because that's not so many, that wouldn't be too bad. So what staff would be proposing is the circles, a lot of signage talking about please stay 6 feet apart, that sort of thing. And then, that's kind of the thought with it. And as far as numbers, we just don't know. I have no concept of how many people are going to really show up. And it could be more than we anticipate, could be less. I really have no idea what we're looking at. But if we're going to do the fireworks, this is the way we can try to do it as safely as possible.
I'd like to move that we approve hosting the fireworks as staff recommend on the packets they sent out to us.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion?
I don't think that this is feasible. All right, it says that we've had roughly 3,000 people attend as part of Booster Days. I think that that's a really low number. The 1,200 downtown public parking spaces, we've had people parking all the way down to St. Croix and further, and all the way up to 8th Street. So if you include all of those parking spots, we've got a lot more than that. I don't see any way that we can maintain social distancing in this. I think it would be irresponsible for us to hold the fireworks at this time.
Anybody else?
And I agree. We're going to be one of the few fireworks events in the area, and we're going to draw more than we usually do. As Woodbury, River Falls, Stillwater have all canceled their major events.
Yeah, Aaron, did you find a schedule of who's hosting fireworks this year?
Who's hosting them?
Yeah.
So again, okay, so the host, who is hosting, and I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, this is not definitely, we didn't call every city in Wisconsin sort of thing, but we did send out a couple emails to different listservs. So the ones that are hosting are having their fireworks right now that responded are Rhinelander, Mondovi, Mosinee.
I'm sorry, I can't understand you.
Yeah, I can't either.
Sorry, that better, no mask. Rhinelander, Mondovi, Mosinee, Marquette, wow, Winnicombe, I'm not kidding about these. Whitewater, Mosa, something, Toma, Grafton, Cedarburg. I've got a couple different emails here, so I'm trying to read through all of them. Let's see.
Are there any in our area?
No. Hartford is, Heartland is, sorry. So those are the ones that responded and said that they are. In our area, no. I mean, on the Wisconsin side, both River Falls and New Richmond, as you know, have canceled. On the Minnesota side, I don't think anybody actually can under their state requirements for large gatherings as far as I know, but I know none of the ones by us are having them, but I'm not sure any cities in Minnesota are. I'm not 100% sure about that. But that's also a big difference because they do have state requirements that are still in effect there.
Well, then the people that were under contract with, their 4th of July was on the 4th in Minnesota, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So, and I don't know what
there
city
could be,
that
I don't know either, he didn't give me a list of cities, but I do know that when we contacted the provider and asked them, you're right, Mayor, they did mention they had some Minnesota cities that were trying to make their decisions and they said they didn't get cancellation, so maybe you're right, maybe they can do it somehow still.
And then I should say we did have another question that was asked last time about the cancellation. And we had that it was a 25% cancellation, but they said it is a 10% cancellation is what they're doing now. And that basically just recovers their costs of what they have to do to return the fireworks they pre-bought and things like that. So it would just be a 10% penalty on the contract.
What are the current county guidelines for?
As far as I'm aware, the county guidelines have not changed since May. And those are still, I believe no large group gatherings more than 10, although I believe that they're going to update that to 50 soon, from what I understand. I don't think it's happened yet. But for the most part, the county guidelines have remained the same and they haven't been updated since we've all reviewed them last, which has been a while.
But the city.
Okay, I think we should be following the county guidelines, and this is way over what the county guidelines expect. If there are no fireworks in the Twin Cities area, I can't even imagine how many people would be coming in to see the fireworks based on what we're seeing downtown on the weekends at the restaurants. So I do not think that we should be hosting fireworks this year.
Say that again, Kathy.
I'd like to, go ahead, Jim.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think 3,000 is a gross underestimate of the possible number of people that we could attract to our community to see fireworks, because there's no other surrounding communities that are going to be hosting. You know, I know traditionally Hudson taxpayers have sponsored our fireworks show, and in return for that sponsorship, we get the boosters to put on booster days, and that's an incredible fundraiser for a really great nonprofit organization that does a lot within our community. But without them, I fail to see how our tax dollars are would be spent on, basically, I think a lot of outsiders coming in to see our fireworks. People I've talked with from the city of Hudson are like, well, I wouldn't go. And so to be fiscally responsible to our own taxpayers, I just don't see that it's, we're not the ones going to be benefiting, it's other people. And one might be able to say, well, our restaurants will benefit from bringing in all these outsiders. And, I don't see that either. Our restaurants downtown are operating, the ones who are implementing social distancing, they're really operating at capacity already. So having more people, and families aren't going to go out to dinner at 9 before fireworks at 10. It's too late.
Sarah, hate to interrupt, Sarah, but we are not spending taxpayer money. That is from room tax dollars.
That could be spent in other ways if we didn't spend it on fireworks, right?
But it's not
We can find other ways.
not our taxpayers' money.
But I thank you for that clarification. I am wrong. But regardless, I just think that I wouldn't be able to support these circles. I don't think people are going to follow them. That is kind of crazy to me. Not only the idea of having circles in the grass for, until the grass grows out and it turns green again, the labor involved in putting those circles down. I just see it as something that after it's dark, we can't enforce that people are going to sit in a circle. And if we're bringing kids there, you can't keep kids, to stay in a spot like that. So, with the CDC, the Department of Health in Wisconsin and St. Croix County all still recommending 10 groups of 10 or less, or even if we go up to 50, I just see, we have too many obstacles to overcome to make this be a safe thing that we can ask people to participate in. So I'm going to say that I would disagree. We should not be holding fireworks in our community this year.
I'm going to, I support this, and certainly would hope that I would have a chance to vote on this. There are a number of reasons. There are a lot of reasons why I support this. First of all, booster days are not happening, which is going to reduce the number of people that would be downtown. A lot of the people watch the fireworks after they spent a day at the booster days, and those are our local folks. With regard to people coming in from Minnesota, we've seen just in the past weekend when Minnesota reopened, the traffic downtown was mitigated significantly. And people, they'd like to stay home. They'd like to go to patronize some of the places near them now that they can again. And so we've seen a reduction in the number of people coming across the border. Who knows how long that will last, but it did happen. I think it's important to understand that our fireworks are on Sunday the 5th. They're not on the 4th. People like to come out on the 4th of July to watch fireworks, and they might go a distance in order to watch those fireworks on the 4th of July. Of course, Stillwater always did theirs on the 4th of July. We always deferred to them, and our fireworks were never on the 4th of July. They used to always be the last day of booster days, and that changed depending upon a few years ago on when booster days actually ended. And now we're kind of going on that Sunday, or perhaps Monday, if Monday is the holiday. So bear in mind, once again, this is on July 5th, Sunday. The holiday is on Friday, the 3rd, not on Monday, which means people have to be home Sunday night because they have to go to work. I quite frankly don't share in the same concern that you guys do that we're going to have this inundation of our downtown just because people are going to travel a long way to see fireworks. I don't particularly see that happening. Moreover, when are we going to stop trying to protect people from themselves? If people are worried about fireworks, if they're worried about social distancing, if they're truly worried about it, they'll stay home. Somebody said that. People said that their friends from Hudson said they're going to stay home. They can do that. It's a choice. When are we going to stop trying to protect people from themselves? Is that our job? I don't think so. Which leads into the next thing, and that is there has to be at some point in time some types of a sense of normalcy that comes back into our lives. This is just a small step. This is one thing that people in our community have looked forward to every year in celebration. It's a community celebration. It's one of the things that unites this community, and it's one of the things that people look forward to. And I really think it's a mistake to say we're not going to let people have a chance to do this. Is this a fear of missing out that we have from people, the FOMO effect? And just because they don't want to be here, they don't want anybody else to be be having a good time out there? We need to get back to some sense of normalcy. We need to bring that back to this community. And in my opinion, this is just one way that we can, again, unite this community. Even though booster days are gone, at least there's some sense of some community event that we have here. And I really believe that this is a good thing to do. If people don't want to be here, if they're worried about it, they just don't show up.
I think we still have to have some concern for example, our public safety, police. Is they're going to be out there with all of the crowds. The only way that we would be able to do any social distancing down at Lakefront Park would be to fence off the whole park, which I don't think is feasible, and then only let in a certain number of people into that park. I just can't see that this is going to be good, and I think there's still a lot of concerns about spreading this virus. The virus is still here. It's not taking the holiday off.
We were worried about this with the people coming across the border when the rules were lifted for Wisconsin. And we saw, everybody talked about this, you guys talked about it, the number of people that we had coming across the border because they could. And we were scared to death. We were hearing all the warnings coming from folks here on the city council, from the county. None of that came to fruition. One thing that we know for sure, we talked about this in the past, and this was reiterated also by Kelly from the county, is that no matter when you lift the regulations, doesn't matter how you do it, there's going to be an increase. It's just a matter of how dramatic that increase is going to be of positive cases. So we experienced a bit of an increase, but it wasn't a dramatic increase, and most of it had to do with the fact that we were testing more people. We have pretty much had a leveling off here of the percentage increases. In fact, I think over the last few days we've just had one additional case, and I just, the sense of worry, I get it, Joyce. It's still out there. We understand that. But at some point in time, remember this also. All of these guidelines were put into place for one reason, and that was to keep pressure off of our medical facilities, off of our hospitals. We haven't seen any of that pressure on our medical facilities here. And it's time we bring this as much as we can back to normal, knowing, of course, that, again, there are going to be increases. It's going to happen. But we also, at this point, haven't experienced any type of pressure on our medical facilities. And that was the whole point of these lockdowns. And I think people have a tendency to forget that. Anybody else?
Darren, you had mentioned that you were going to be bringing some updated statistics to the meeting tonight. Did you get anything for us?
Actually, I think Kathy may have more up to date than I do at this point, but we did talk to County Health about, like numbers and things like that. And, I think just for the city of Hudson, we've got 14 total active cases right now. 15. So we have an increase from when I got my numbers last time. So I don't know.
Hudson is 15, Town of Hudson 7, North Hudson 1, Troy 1, and St. Joe. And those are active cases at this time, and I got that today from Kelly.
And I heard that we have had our first fatality, right?
Yeah.
St. Croix County?
Well, I hadn't heard that.
A
It
74.
is on the dashboard. I didn't get that from Kelly on, for
74.
Hudson and the surrounding
70-year-old?
municipalities.
74. He was.
So I'm a huge proponent of getting things back to normal, absolutely, or even some level of normalcy. But this is not normal. We are not in normal times, and we're risking the health and well-being of people in order to have fireworks, and we're adding to this complexity by drawing circles on the ground. I think it's, nearly almost all the communities around our area are canceling, and I don't see how this council can feel like we know better than the CDC, there's the Department of Health. I just don't see it.
Anybody else?
Yeah, so I just want to weigh in. I want to say that I love fireworks, and I think that they are an important symbolic, piece of the 4th of July. So I wish we could have them, but I feel like the reward and the risk, as I think of risk and reward, it's not a good year to do them, based on what other communities are doing and based on the virus. It reminds me of a headline I saw in the news a few days ago. It said, America's done with COVID-19, but COVID-19 is not done with America. So it's unfortunate, I think, that there's been polarization over COVID-19. It's really a scientific issue. It's not a political issue. So we just have to be smart about what we do. We have to try to mitigate the risk. And I just think the idea of crowds of thousands in Lakefront Park just does not, the reward in this case is just not worth the risk, bottom line. So I've been really, really open to hearing both sides, and I think there's actually really good arguments on both sides. And I understand the desire to get back to normalcy, because I have that as well. But I just think we're not there yet. And I think this is probably the summer to play it cautious. So that's my thought on that.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion is not approved.
I'll make the motion that we cancel the fireworks.
Second.
Motion is second to cancel the fireworks. Any need for discussion?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing is that I think that we should think of alternatives to the fireworks. I don't know if we
That's
could
not
take
the
some of
motion
the
right
money
now,
that we
Paul.
have at
Paul, that's
some
not the
point and
motion
put it
right now.
into buying, American flags and putting them down Main Street or something like
That's
that.
not- Paul,
if we
that's
can't
not the
do
motion
fireworks,
right
I think
now.
it's important to think about what's an alternative we could do to celebrate the 4th of July for our community.
All right, we got a motion in front of us, cancel fireworks. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Nay.
Motion's approved, cancel fireworks. Discussion and possible action on the request by Kim Delmonico to use Lakefront Park Band Shell on July 14th and July 15th, 2020 for a dance recital.
So this again is where we talked about last meeting. We control our parks, and we'll bring forward any large-scale events that are being requested. This is a fairly large-scale event, although, well, it is what it is. So we're putting it out there to the council if you want to see it approved or not.
Anybody?
I move we approve.
Second.
Motion and second to approve. Discussion?
It was a little bit difficult, but it appeared to be that they were staging when the parents would be there. Is that?
Correct. From what they're proposing, it would be, they would assign
Oh.
time. Oh, sorry, somebody's here, maybe on the
Oh,
phone.
sorry, I'm on. I can't get my video on, but I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead. That's even better. I'd rather have you answer.
Yeah, so so I've owned the dance studio for 10 years, and we put on a show every year. And so we've gotten pretty good at organization. Obviously, we haven't been able to do one this year, and we have graduating seniors and a bunch of kids that would love to finally get on stage and perform in some way. So what we were thinking is we'd be able to space out all of the groups to have different arrival times and departure times. Also to have a videographer there that could do a live, kind of some type of live stream of the event, so we could limit the number of actual audience members there, to try to also keep the numbers down in that way. Also measure out 6 feet apart, put tape down on the grass, and have some volunteers be able to keep the kids from scattering around and getting too close to each other. But it would be so wonderful we could do this. There are so many little broken hearts, and these kids have worked so hard, and I just right now with COVID and all the other things happening in the world, just to even spread a little joy with some dancers in the community would be great. We recently moved to Lakeland, so we have a lot of dancers from the Hudson area. So yes, I'm begging you. This would be wonderful.
How many students would you have in each group?
So most of our classes are under 15 students. We are a smaller studio. We have about 100 students total, but that's why I requested 2 days, a Tuesday and a Wednesday. We could potentially put half the kids in each show, and then also have their arrival and departure time. So when one class was done, they would leave. And I'm still kind of trying to work out how I would do it with parents that have siblings. They might have to stay there a little bit longer, but I think if we had these kids in groups of 10 spread out 6 feet apart with a volunteer, an adult volunteer, we'd be able to keep them lined up, and as soon as one group has done both of their dances, they're free to go. Their parents leave, we space out the arrival time, the next group comes in, so at least they get to do their dance on a stage in front of just even a small audience of their parents would be so meaningful to them.
So is there enough room on the stage for the students to be spread out while they're performing?
You know what, that is actually a good question. I have not gotten the full dimensions of the stage. I don't know if somebody can provide me with those. I have been to it and I've looked at it. To me, it looks though I would be able to mark out, and that's kind of what we do at our normal recitals anyways, is we mark out tape spots for the kids to stand on, because obviously they need enough room to dance as it is. And depending on the dimensions that I get, I would even be happy for the groups to even be split up a little bit if I need to do that more. And even if I had to rent out more time to get more groups in, I would do that. I just really would love the opportunity to work this out so these kids have this chance. I feel like, well, as you know, all of our lives have been so disrupted. But some of these kids, some of our competition dancers specifically, they don't do any other sports. This is kind of their thing, and they didn't get to do anything this year because competitions don't usually start until the spring. And like I said too, we have a lot of graduating seniors this year, and not only did they not get a graduation, they haven't had a chance to even dance their hearts out at all and perform. So anything I could do would be wonderful. Even if I had to limit to each group only gets to do one of their routines, I'm really willing to work with you guys and whatever you think this would best fit. I wasn't quite sure. I feel like I can organize it in many different ways to make it work for you. It was just kind of my first proposal to split it up into 2 shows, and then have them kind of come in and out at different times. But I could even make it where they just do one routine and go as well.
So staff did look at what the proposal was, and we think that what they're proposing with the size that they have there, that they should be able to do it with what she has proposed.
Okay.
Anybody else? All right, we have a motion for us. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good to have you with us.
Many people very happy, many children happy, so I can't thank you enough.
Discussion and possible action on a request by Patrona Melgareo, hope I said that right, to use White Camp Park on Monday, June 29, 2020 for a gathering for love, peace, healing, and solidarity. and COVID.
I got nothing more than what's there.
I would move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion second to approve. Discussion?
How many?
Are we worried about anything in this park at all, spreading the disease or what? Not at all?
I've talked to, okay, so this is part of the Hudson Inclusion Alliance, and I've talked to Carrie Rice about it, and she said that they will be maintaining social distance there, being very cautious. We could change this to having them work with staff to make, with city staff to make sure that they're doing social distancing, or we could approve it with the condition that they maintain social distancing.
Well, on their sheet, it says that they're going to be all wearing masks and they're doing pre-registrations and it's limited to 300 people. So it sounds like they're taking it pretty seriously. My question would be more for maybe Chief Willems, if he's in the room. I don't know if he's there. Just about if you have a crowd of 300, do we have a plan for sort of security for that, or kind of patrolling that?
What about the guidelines from the county of 50, 10 to 50 now? How's that play into this?
That's a good question, Randy.
So it's a convenient for when you like something, but when you don't want to agree with something, it doesn't work for you.
Well, we could limit it to 50, or have recommend that they do 2 sessions, limited to 50 at each session. No, good point, Randy.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Randy. I don't think this is about ideology. I think this is again about science. We're trying to make sure people are safe.
The other question I have, I just want to throw out, this is at a park. It's a public park. It's not a building where it has specific entryways. What is their plan for limiting the number of people? You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, you have to register and all that kind of stuff. It's not like you're going through an entryway for fencing. Don't get me wrong, I'm not opposed to it necessarily. I just wonder how that limiting actually happens.
You can't say, well, yeah, you can't, they're not routines.
I wouldn't expect city staff to be the
Well,
people.
that would be the question. I mean, it is our park, so we can control it. But then it's, if you want us to control it and you want to send guidelines, then yes, then we need to have the conversation about how. So is it going to be police officers there, making sure that they're doing a head count, that it doesn't get above a certain number? You know, or are we just going to trust them that here's what our requirements are? We trust you to meet those requirements, and that's it. But yeah, we generally don't have a staff that are going to go out and enforce something like this. It would mostly be, here's what our requirements are. We expect you to meet these requirements, and kind of that's it. But if it is truly 300 people, again, I'm not, this is nothing, this is more just completely based on the activity itself. I would assume that we would probably need a police officer only for traffic control, if nothing else, to help people kind of moving, and if there's things like that. I mean, otherwise I would say that staff would probably not want to be out there head counting and ensuring certain numbers. I think that would be the responsibility of the organizer to do it. I'd rather not put that on us or the PD, to be honest. I don't necessarily think we would want the PD to be involved. I don't see the need for it, and I don't see what the benefit of it would be. I think in a situation like this, whatever parameters the council decides to set, I think we would just request that the organizer is the one responsible for that, and that they're the ones that are going to be enforcing, but not putting that on our police department or our staff in a situation like this.
I think it would be smart to have a police present at this, though, because we've all seen, right, the Twin Cities, what's been going on the last few weeks, and this is addressing some of those same issues, and I'm not anticipating that, something will be a problem, but I just think it would make sense to have a police presence during this gathering.
Well, it wouldn't be rallies and things in the past, political events, but, you know, they have generally reached out to us in advance to assist with a plan. This is the first I'm hearing of this, so, you know, I have not spoken to the organizer. I don't know what the plans are. 300 people, you know, but, you know, having a police presence at something like this could have one of two effects, right? It could bring a lot of animosity. That's not intended. It could be good. You just don't know, right? You know, we'll do what you guys want us to do, but
You know, I think to monitor without being real active and visible, yeah, as Randy said, visible. This is a gathering for love, peace, healing, and solidarity. I have faith in the folks in our community. I have a lot of faith in the folks of our community, as well as the folks that would be coming in from surrounding communities that are being hosted by our people here, the folks of our community. I've got a lot of faith in them. I'm not believing that there's going to be trouble there. Obviously, it could happen. We know that. And let me also state this. I'm going to be consistent in what I believe. And 300 people, 400 people, 1,000 people, I'm good. Doesn't matter to me. The more the merrier. I think it's a great event, and bring it on. Let's go.
Aaron, how many people have been coming to the church service in Lakefront Park on Sunday mornings?
I don't think we're doing any sort of head count. I don't know. I mean, I was going to say, it definitely was well under 100 because they were, you know, I did go look. I just want to see it, just to make sure. It was spread out. I mean, I didn't do a head count at all, and I didn't want to stop. I didn't want to make it an issue. I just kind of drove by. But yeah, okay. So I thought it was well under 100, but Mike thinks it was about 50 probably.
Okay. I think that we should limit the numbers here, and in order to be consistent, the issue is, how much space would be required if they had about 100 people there, or if we limited it to 50. If we're going to stick with the county guidelines, then we should limit it to 50 and allow them to do more than one session if they need to, in order to limit it to 50.
Now you talked before about logistics and manageability. You know, how do you do 2 different sessions? You have people sign up for different sessions. Look at, I don't care what you guys did on fireworks. I really don't care why. It doesn't matter. I like this event. And again, I've got the faith in our people, and I'm not going to try to protect people from themselves. They're adults, and they know what they're doing. And if this is the way they want to gather, I'm all for it. I don't have a problem with that. And like I said, I think it's a great event, and we ought to promote this.
I'm very torn with this one. I'd like to see less people than 300 gather together. I'd like to I think it is possible to have a RSVP. There are many websites that do, doodle poll or whatever, that are pretty easy to get people to sign up for things. But maybe spread it over, ask them to spread it, or think about spreading it over a couple days and limiting that number to where we are more comfortable. It's very possible that by June 29th, the 50 limit recommendation gets lifted up to some higher number. But we can't know that tonight. So I'm very torn.
Well, so the longer table events have had about 300 people.
Yep.
I don't know that something like this on a weeknight where it's not going to be a meal, it's going to be a lot more low key. I would be surprised if it attracted 300 people.
What is the 29th? What night is that?
The Monday night. 2 weeks from tonight.
You know, well,
Catherine, it's right there.
we never know what events are going to attract. Given that the longer table was, they kind of an initial event. We've had it, 2 years? And I think it was bigger the second time. I would expect, frankly, that we would have easily 300 people, and I would bet you that we would have more. And I don't know, once again, it's the same thing. How do you control how many people are going to be coming in? You really can't. We don't know. We don't know how far, what distance they'll come from in order to participate. We just don't know.
Are we?
Let me ask this. May I interrupt just a second, Bill?
Yep.
There was a comment to have it extended out over a couple days. Jeff, what do you think of that?
I'd rather see it just happen in one night.
Yeah, I'm thinking if we go more than one night, then you might be inviting trouble.
Well, if there were 300 people in White Camp Park, how much space would you need in order to have social distancing? Would it take up most of the lower area of White Camp Park?
There's a lot of green space there. I mean, it's a big park. I mean, there's plenty of room for that size of people to, spread out. Again, it's requesting social distancing, not enforcing, but the room is there. The parking I can see as a concern. I mean, I think there's only about 60 spots there. So my assumption is if you get 300 people, you're going to have people parking on O'Neill, which is fine. It's wide enough for the most part to accommodate, parking and stuff like that. I mean, it's not necessarily a really high traffic road. So yeah, I mean, I think just logistically, looking at it the same way as kind of any event, I think it's got the space. I think the parking, there's between on street and in there, there's probably enough spots to accommodate if they get that many. So yeah, it's just what the council's comfortable with. But I think logistically, you can make it happen.
So we could require them to mark off some spaces for social distancing.
I was just going to ask the same question. Are we looking at spray painting circles for this event?
So I guess in my opinion, we looked at the fireworks as a city-sponsored event, where this is more of a private event. So I don't think our staff would be necessarily doing it unless you direct us to. But I would be looking at this more because it's a private event. It's kind of on them. I know, even though it's our facility, but it would be on them to do that social distancing, whether it's marking out the circles or if they're just going to have people walking around kind of doing it.
Well, this would be similar to the church group in Lakefront Park and the dance recital also, where they would be expected to maintain this, or have people guiding social distancing.
Correct.
All right, we've got a motion in front of us.
Did we need a second or not? Did we already get that?
I think it was seconded. Did it?
Yeah. I believe it was seconded, wasn't it, Becky?
Yep, it was.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve.
Joyce, do you have any amendment, like on the numbers? Is there anything that you want to put down in terms of the numbers on that event?
Yeah, I think that it would be a good idea to limit it to 100 people. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I think if the county guidelines, we should try to follow that right now. We should.
Which would be 50.
Is that what it currently is 50?
It's currently 10, but I know that I did talk to the county just today, and they said that they're working on updated guidelines where they think that it's going to be up to 50, it's going to be up to 50, but they didn't give me a date when that would go into effect, though. So I know Kelly said that they're looking at moving that number up to 50 from the 10, but I know that it has not been done yet. So I don't know what the timing is, and she didn't give me a timing. She was not positive either.
So we're already allowing that more for like the church service and dance thing. So we're already not being consistent, it sounds like. But what I'm wondering is if we could put it, Joyce, just that the language would be to follow whatever the current county guideline is. That way, if the numbers go up between now and then, you know, it would be whatever they said of that.
Well, just understand that could mean that it's just 10. If the county for some reason doesn't update it before this event, you know, maybe they plan on updating it after the 4th of July. I don't know. But if they didn't update it, it would only be 10 people.
Okay, and that's not going to work for my
Right. So I would say you should, if you're going to do it, either just let it happen or put a cap on it of something then that they're going to have to enforce. But I wouldn't tie it to the county guidelines that way, just because as of this point in time, basically, if nothing happened, they really couldn't have the event then.
So, Joyce, do you think like 150 or 200 or something in that range?
Well, if we're going to be consistent, and okay, so we've approved the church, and we haven't had any limits on their numbers. We've approved the recital, and we don't have limits on their numbers, although they shouldn't have. Neither of these places should have huge numbers. So, what are the other thoughts on this? Should we limit it to 100? Or do we just let it happen?
My perspective is if we're going to limit it, we should limit it, we should be limiting to what the county guidelines are. And I say that because unlike fireworks, this is an event where in order to participate, you are going to have to go to White Camp Park versus the fireworks where you can see it from many different places. So I would say to be consistent with what the county guidelines are is probably where we should be at. But I know that we're not consistent with previous, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Jim, what are your thoughts?
The discussions, as I remember the discussions with the church were 50 to 100 max they were thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just kind of doing some numbers in my head, 15 for the dance recital, 15 kids times plus at least four relatives per kid. Mm-hmm. They're going to be pushing 100 for every show. So that's kind of a number that we're perhaps looking at. That may have a significant deterrent effect, negative effect on this event, which from the heart of it is a good event. I mean, it's really helping us trying to move the world forward.
Mm-hmm. The other thing, the organizers are saying it's pre-registration and they're requiring everybody wear a mask. So the mask is super important for their event too. It's worth considering.
You don't honestly think that people
they are going to social distance, so if they've got an idea of how many people are planning to participate, then they should be able to mark off sections in the park for their guests. I'm not going to amend my motion. I'm going to trust them to maintain social distance. I know that the people who are running this have been very careful about social distancing.
So, wasn't that your original motion, Joyce?
Yeah, she's not amending it, so.
Oh, you're not amending it?
Not amending it.
Just let it happen?
Yep, just approve the event.
Oh, I thought she said she was amending it.
No amendment.
No.
All right, so the motion is just to let it go, just the way it's stated right now. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
With the second, everything good? All right, all those in favor?
Seconded the motion.
Pardon me?
Becky's got it.
Who seconded the motion?
Sarah.
Sarah, okay.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Hypocrites.
Let's see. Discussion and possible action on the plans and specifications for the 2020 stormwater projects and authorization to proceed with the advertisement for bids.
I'll make this brief.
Right.
This is typically on consent agenda. However, there was a deadline that was missed. This was supposed to be on the June 1st council meeting for approval of plans, specifications, and advertisement for bids. Obviously, it wasn't on there. Subsequently, there was an ad placed in the paper the week of June 4th and June 11th. And so, if you think about it, the plans and specifications weren't approved by the council, but yet the publication was submitted and ran. So we have two options tonight. Basically, we can have the council approve the plans and specifications, which are in the packet, which basically repairs a lot of the stormwater catch basins on 2nd Street in conjunction with the Highway 35 project, or we can throw out all the advertisements and start over. So it's up to you, however you want to proceed to do that.
I think you should just move forward with what you got.
Yeah.
I would move to approve that.
Got a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion, second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion's approved. Thanks, Mike. Discussion possible action on mask requirements for businesses. Who brought this forward?
I did. Yeah, I'd like to make sure that, I'd like to have it explained what we would have to do to have a mask requirement, because people have been asking about that, and so wanted to have that explained at the last council meeting, but it wasn't, since it wasn't on the agenda. I'm not asking to take any action right now. I just want to make sure that we all understand what would be involved in having a mask requirement for businesses.
Okay, to really have any requirements regarding the COVID situation, you need to have an emergency declaration. That's, the council chose not to do that, but you would need to do that. That would provide the basis. You'd have to have facts, supporting the declaration of an emergency. So that would kind of provide the foundation, and then your regulations need to be supported also by facts as to the benefit or need or, whatever it happens to be for those regulations. And I assume you're talking about, are you requiring businesses to require their employees to wear masks?
Well, at this point, I'm not asking for action to be taken. I'm just asking to find out, is this worth discussing?
No, but
at this point, I don't know that it is.
Is
but,
that what you're contemplating? Requiring businesses to have their employees wear masks?
So it would be businesses requiring employees and businesses requiring, shoppers or patrons to wear masks as well.
So, again, you got to have facts and so forth to support the emergency declaration. And then, there's not a whole lot of law on this, as you might expect. It's a new situation, but there are varying opinions, obviously, on it. Some say, yes, it's helpful. Some say, no, it's not helpful. I also found articles that indicate that some people have health conditions whereby it's not good for them to wear masks. So there's a lot of issues just in establishing that, substantive, not legal issues, but in establishing that type of requirement. Our county health department, who, they are the health people, they have not made that a requirement, and so that's an issue people could raise, why hasn't your county health department, what does the city know that the county health department doesn't? So there may be some issues in just the factual basis for requiring masks. There also may be some issues in requiring private businesses telling them how to operate their businesses. I mean, that's basically the discussion we've had. It's previously you've thought, promoting those guidelines that are developed by the Economic Development Corporation. They're in a better position to be able to, analyze these types, the industries and the businesses and so forth. So those are the issues that come up. It's got to be, narrowly tailored to achieve the government objective. You're going to have to prove all that kind of stuff. So, like I said, I did put it out on the city attorney's listserv and no one responded. I did look at the league. They have what they're calling a toolkit, League of Wisconsin Municipalities. Beloit has an emergency declaration. They don't require, they address masks, but they specifically say we're not requiring it. We are recommending it. Are you going to ask people if they have a health condition or put that responsibility on the businesses to ask their customers why they're not willing to wear a mask? There's just a lot of practical issues in enforcement. So I haven't gotten the sense that, at least in our state, any of the municipalities are doing it. I can't say they aren't, but no one responded. There are some municipalities on the East Coast, just doing a Google search that they've done it. There's also been states that have done it and then have backed away because it's been difficult to enforce. Just even conflict between people, the business trying to force their customers. That's a difficult situation to put them in. So those are the issues that I've found just researching it, and I don't really have anything more than that.
Okay, thank you. I've gotten a lot of questions about that, and so I wanted to have this on the record to make sure that I can refer them to this rather than me explaining it to them.
Sure.
All right, anybody else on that? Okay, discussion and possible action on emergency event process.
Okay, so all right, at the last meeting, I wanted to ask some questions about what happened with the National Guard assistance, and I wasn't able to ask those questions, but I wanted to make sure that, first of all, the public needs to know several things. The council was neither informed, briefed, or consulted before the letter was sent. The bars closed voluntarily. No order was sent out closing them. A copy of the letter was sent by email to the council. I did not see it until after I saw the posting on Facebook and was asked by a number of people what was going on. All I had was a copy of the letter without any background information. So there, and then, so help me understand, how was the decision to request National Guard assistance made? Why was the council or the Public Safety Committee not consulted or informed ahead of time? Why were council members not given talking points or answers to possible questions ahead of time? Why was the community not notified, and who made that decision? And then I've gotten a lot of questions from other people, constituents. So when the request was made to the governor for National Guard troops to be sent to Hudson, did you have any expectation that those troops would arrive that night. All indications are that mobilizing a National Guard presence takes significant time, likely days. The letter to the, and this is all from a letter from a constituent. The letter to the governor described Hudson's situation because of its proximity to the Twin Cities was described as dire. If the situation was dire as he described, why was no curfew instituted in the city of Hudson at the time of the request or any time afterward? The public statement put out was that the request made was out of an overabundance of caution. This public statement is in direct contradiction to the request that describes a very serious situation that warranted military presence. What is true?
Where do you want to begin?
All right, so
Start with your first question.
yeah, how was the decision to request National Guard assistance made?
Why?
How?
How? How was it made?
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a letter to the governor.
So what prompted that? I mean, was it, did you have meetings with the county, with others, with city staff? Did you follow the emergency operations plan that we've got?
Well, first of all, Joyce, you should be aware that the emergency operations protocol that we have is only if a state of emergency is declared. No state of emergency had been declared. So that booklet only applies when, with those protocols, only applies when there's a state of emergency. I would have figured you'd known that. Relative to the discussions that I'd had, I can't remember for sure, but I think that I was talking to the chief on Thursday night. Friday night, I mean. May have been Thursday night as well. I was talking with the chief. I talked to the chief, I'd say 3 times Saturday morning. I talked with the county sheriff a couple times Saturday morning. I talked with the public safety chair Friday night and Saturday morning, and I talked with our congressman Tom Tiffany Saturday morning, who gave me a call. I talked with Aaron a number of times Friday and Saturday, and so obviously it's not a decision that was made lightly, but it was one that I felt needed to be made. With all of those people that were involved, I thought that I had enough information to make the decision. Unfortunately, and I don't know how much we can get into this, but unfortunately, a lot of the information that was provided to me was confidential, and I promised to keep that information confidential, and that confidentiality was broken. And I take responsibility for that, and I feel very badly about that because it created a situation with our law enforcement on Saturday where much of that time, their time on Saturday, was dealing with damage control rather than dealing with the issues that they had at hand and trying to coordinate the response with all the different law enforcement agencies that we had represented here in our community. So, but I think that topic is going to be coming up in the next agenda item. So, what was your second item?
Okay, why were council members not given talking points or answers to possible questions ahead of time? Why was the community not notified, and who made that decision?
Well, who made the decision to notify the community, I think, is a better question. So, first of all, council members were not given talking points, and the community was not notified because we had not heard from the governor on whether he was going to be actually sending the National Guard out. We did not want to alarm the community. I reiterate, we did not want to alarm the community. We did not want to overburden our law enforcement with questions that might be coming in unless or until the governor had made the determination that he would in fact send National Guard here, at which point we would have had significant amounts of time to provide the council members and the community with information about what was about to happen. Next.
So, did you have any expectation that these troops would arrive that night?
I had an expectation that we would have troops alerted, and in fact, it's my understanding that they were already on alert in River Falls and New Richmond because Governor Evers had committed to Governor Walz that he would provide them with National Guard assistance in the event that they needed more troops over there and more assistance in Minnesota. So we knew that they were going to be right in our area anyway. So to answer your question, if in fact we had any type of violence here, any type of I don't know, antagonists in our town, yeah, my expectation is if and only if our law enforcement was not capable in handling that, and clearly we saw that they had huge capability over the course of those 3 days, then yes, the expectation is that we would have gotten support for our law enforcement.
Okay, the next question was, if the situation was dire as described, why was no curfew instituted in the city of Hudson at the time of the request or any time afterward? And also, another question is, why were the bars not ordered to close?
I'll weigh in on some of these as well, since I was involved too. From the discussion, the curfew occurred, and as you know, because you and other council members called about that question of curfew,
Yeah.
and I said the same thing at that point, was that the emergency command team, which was made up of our police department, the sheriff department, and other agents, law enforcement agencies, at that time made the determination that it wasn't in the best interest to do the curfew. And the exact reasoning behind it, I don't know, because I'm not involved directly in those conversations. That's up to the emergency management team that does that. And again, like I said, that was led by the county and other agencies, with our department obviously as part of it. But they felt that it wasn't in the best interest to do it, and I didn't feel the need to try to overrule that, and I believe the mayor felt the same way, that we were taking the advice of those that were part of that command team and what they were recommending we do or not do, and they did not recommend at that time that we do a curfew.
One answer that I had gotten from somebody was that with a curfew, that can actually work into the antagonizer's hands, because if people are arrested for violating the curfew, that can.
So what's the point of your question, Joyce?
What's that?
So what's the point of your question?
Because I want these to be on the record.
But if you're saying that we shouldn't have imposed a curfew, why are you asking why we didn't?
This was one of the questions that one of my constituents asked, and I'm getting the official information. But the other question that I have is, why weren't the bars closed? Why did they voluntarily close? Why weren't they forced to close?
Did you think they should have been forced to close?
Well, if things are that serious that a letter is sent to the governor asking for National Guard troops, what if National Guard troops had shown up at 11 o'clock midnight when people are...
We would have had plenty of time for that, Joyce. My question to you is, do you think it should have been imposed? Should we have closed the bars?
If a letter was sent like this, yes.
Should we have closed the bars?
That the bars should have been closed.
Well, they did close on their own.
Yes, and I'm glad of that.
And by the way, I was in touch. I'd walked through downtown that afternoon, and I was talking to a number of the business owners, and I did talk to quite a few of the bar owners, and they told me that they were going to be closing their facilities down.
Okay, and then, the last question that the constituent asked was that the public statement was put out that the request was made out of an overabundance of caution. The public statement is in direct contradiction to the request that describes a very serious situation that warranted military presence. What is true? And
What isn't true? You were watching the same information we were all watching. We were all receiving the same information. So if you were watching the 2 a.m. press conference on Thursday morning, you were watching the governor of Minnesota talk about anarchists, white supremacists, cartel coming in. That message was continued on Friday in their press conferences. We were receiving, and we as in the city and emergency management team were receiving a number of unconfirmed, confirmed information. This is out, here's more. No one really knew exactly what was true. So what was in the letter was true. There was a very dire concern of the information that we had received that this was happening. But it was also true that it was done out of overabundance of caution because no one had exact facts. Not us, not the state of Minnesota, anyone. So both of those things are true. They may not be exactly in line, but when you look at the situation and how fluid it was, the reality is that both of those things were true. It was felt that it was a dire situation based on the information that we were receiving and hearing. And at the same time, we made that decision. The decision was made to make the request because we did want an overabundance of caution. If any of that would have turned out to be true, it was the city's responsibility to be ready for that. And that's why both of those statements are true, while they may seem a little contradictory, but the reality is they were true in that situation. They both were.
And by the time that next statement came out, Joyce, what we were trying to do also is to calm the community.
Well, I know. Yeah, I'm asking these questions on behalf of the
Sure.
constituents and so that we have a public discussion on this so that they understand what was going on. Thank you for the discussion.
I think
You had also asked a question, Joyce, about why you had to read it on Facebook or on social media before you actually got the letter. Well, all the council members got the letter at the same time, and one of the council members decided to share that letter with their next door neighbor. So it got out on social media before you had a chance to open up your email. And that, by the way, was a violation of our ordinance here, as well as a violation of the trust that we placed in our city council to manage information that they get judiciously. And of course, you all had seen an email that went out just the day before that, asking the council not to be sharing confidential information, especially on social media.
So I think just as kind of my role here, I don't know honestly exactly, but just as a way to kind of bring this together a little bit, I mean, I want to stress that this was the most unique situation I've ever dealt with in my 20 plus years as a city administrator. It's not something that I think any of us anticipated occurring, especially in the middle of COVID and everything else going on. You know, it was very unique. There was a lot of information coming in almost nonstop. And a lot of it was the very same information that you were seeing on the news. But we were hearing it from other sources as well. So it makes it makes it a very fluid situation. It was something where we were literally dealing with things as they developed, and things continue to develop very rapidly and change. And like I said, we do have a process where once an incident like this is over, our police department, in working with the other law enforcement agencies that were involved in this, they do a review of the situation. They take a look back on what happened, how it was handled, what we did, and how can we do it better? How can we do it differently? Are there changes we need to make in that process to make sure that next time something like this occurs, that we're more prepared and we're more ready? And that is occurring and that is happening. So I understand that there's a lot of questions that came out of it. It was very fluid. Obviously, there's always things that can be done better, and that's why we do a look back and review and see what didn't work, what did work, what could we do differently. But I have to say that it was, the mayor was in constant contact with myself and staff all day, all night through the whole process in trying to get through this. And decisions were made in the best interest of the protection of the city of Hudson and our partners. Everything, like I said, it was interesting. It was a very interesting process, and I feel like that the review is necessary, and we're doing it, and it's being done internally with everyone involved, and we'll look at how it was handled. But I think it has to be understood that we were doing the best we could on the fly, just like everyone else. just like everyone else. And we were lucky that we were on the edge of this, the very edge. And, you know, we weren't the ones that were directly in it, and you saw how that went with them dealing with it on the fly. So we'll learn from it, clearly, but I think in looking at it, that the decisions that were made were always done in the best interest of the community and what we needed to do to be prepared in case of any scenario.
You know, one other thing that should be pointed out in case you missed it is that Governor Walz had actually sent the National Guard up to Moorhead to ward off what was they believed to be a threat coming from the protests that were happening in Fargo. And so he wanted to protect the border because he was worried that people were going to be coming across the North Dakota border into Minnesota. So a similar situation, but the information was significantly different up there than it was down here because we were being told that people were going to be coming up 94, coming out of Chicago and different areas that would access 90 and 94. So, would I do that again? Would I make that same decision with all the information that we had and the people that I talked with? Absolutely I would, because the bottom line is keeping this community safe. And you're right, Joyce. How long does it take to actually mobilize these guys? You said 3 days. I don't know that it's
I don't know how long it takes.
I don't know
That's why
either. But you know what? By the time, if you're waiting for something to happen before you call them out, it's too late.
Yep.
It was too late in Minneapolis. It was too late in Milwaukee. It was too late in Madison. And I didn't want to make it too late here in Hudson. But here's the difficult part. Knowing what I know now, the question is, would I have shared this information with the council? Because I can't keep that information confidential and keep it from getting out into the community and creating a potential panic in the community. And that was a decision that I made when I talked with Aaron, and I put the letter together and asked him if he would get it off to Governor Evers, and I said, we need to include the council, we need to include Shannon, we need to include Patty, and I think we also included
The county board chair and the county administrator.
County board chair, county administrator, our chief of police, the sheriff, and I think Tiffany. Did we include Tiffany?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe so.
That was a lot of people, and it was a lot of people to have shared confidential information that I was given with a promise that I would maintain that confidentiality. And I feel terrible that I feel that I broke that confidentiality, but it was information that needed to be shared with the governor, and I thought as long as I'm sharing it with him, I needed to share it also with our council members. And that meant that our chief and our sheriff had to spend the entire day Saturday working on trying to either verify that this information was true, that the letter was accurate, that it was sent out based upon information that we had, and they got inundated with a lot of phone calls that they didn't need to receive that day because they had a yeoman's job the way it was.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, anything?
I'm glad that it turned out the way that it turned out and that we didn't need the National Guard here.
Okay, aren't we all?
I think a short paragraph outlining what you just went through as part of the information that the council received would have made a lot of difference.
Mm-hmm.
We were operating with nothing. And so what's being done, what's going on in the city, what are our people going to see when, what's happening? There were other things out there like Target's closed, Walmart's closed, their police cars gathered in different areas, so that there was stuff out there. We had nothing to say.
I guess I would feel. I feel this. You saying that there is nothing out there to the council isn't fair to staff. I mean, I can go back and count the number of emails I sent the council during those 3-4 days, but you were receiving multiple about here's what's happening now, here's what's happening now, here's the quickest update, all's quiet, things like that. I did everything I did.
I'm sorry, you're going to have to show me those emails because
I'll be
I
happy
don't
to
know.
re-forward them to you, and I'd also be happy to re-forward you the ones where we talk about, we're trying to get information out as quick as we can to the council, but this is also a situation where, we're just trying to work through everything that's happening at once, and, it can't be in emergency situations a vote on everything that happens, which is why we try to
I'm
update
not
the
asking for a
council.
vote, Aaron.
No, I know, but you're asking about.
I'm asking for a short explanation.
Right,
of what
and which is
we've
what
got.
we were
It's
trying to
analysis
do
of
on a
what
very
is-
regular basis, and I'll be happy to re-forward those
happened over
emails.
The last 3 days.
Yep.
Should have been included as part of that letter.
Jim, frankly, we didn't have time to get an explanation out. The letter, I copied you with the letter that I had sent to the governor. And before I even had a chance to take a breath, my phone was ringing off the hook on whether this was real or not. And we didn't even have a chance to sit down and formulate anything to you guys before our phones blew up. I did get a call from Sarah. I did get a call from Bill. I think I got a call from Paul. Randy for sure, because he was in on the discussion as chair of public safety. All you got to do is pick up a phone.
Well,
If I may,
at that
Mr.
point in time, I
Mayor?
did not have a phone,
Yep.
so I couldn't do that. I was in a hospital 90 miles away with no cellular service, so there was no way to contact you. I probably would have done that.
If I may interject here, folks. Okay. We're the city council of Hudson. We're going through an issue. We got an email that got out in public purview, but we received an email. The first thing in my gut was to pick up the phone and talk to the mayor and our city administrator and find out the information. Now here we are, 2 meetings later, so how many weeks are we talking about? Getting the answers to questions that we were posed back then? We need to communicate. If you're interested about the safety of Hudson, you need to pick up the phone.
No, we don't. We need to be told what's going on. We don't, that's 6 individual phone calls that mayor was already inundated with. We should have had an explanation, a brief explanation of what was going on and why this was super confidential. It was not labeled confidential.
You honestly, a letter to the governor, and you want to know why that's confidential. A letter with information like you saw in there, and you couldn't surmise that was confidential? Plus, you'd already had an email coming out saying do not share anything with anybody, especially social media. So, Jim, if you're reading an email, you obviously had a way to contact me.
What I had was the ability to use a computer, but not the ability to contact you.
Well, you certainly contacted somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, not me.
I was 90 miles away in a hospital with no cellular service. My wife was home alone. What am I supposed to do? Say the community is going to be okay? I don't need to warn her. I don't need to warn my neighbor, ask him to take care of her.
So again, this comes down to when we have our, this was referenced before, our emergency operations plan, things like that. And this is something we need to review with this, is how we communicate with the council, and I fully appreciate that. But the city was releasing information, and we were trying to keep everybody updated. If there was a situation, yes, the city will notify the citizens. But when it's done, when as an individual council member you feel the need to do it yourself, we're not able to structure anything with that. There's nothing that we can do to provide any sort of, like you talked about, context. And I understand that you would have liked context with that email and what was going on, but we never got there even. We wanted to get the email out, and we never got to step 2 because it was out immediately, and then it was more, let's try to get context out as soon as we can, but it was, it was a lot of phone calls, and it was a lot of things like that. So there is a reason we have an emergency operations plan. The county has an emergency operations plan. Everyone does, is so you can try to focus some of the communications and things like that. And you have every right as a council member to question how we communicated and what we communicated to either council members or the public. I fully understand and can appreciate that, but we have to still follow that so that we are getting a focused and structured message out. So it's not something just gets released without context and then it's let's scramble to provide context. So I fully get that, and I understand, and I'm fully willing to review and discuss any criticism about the communication between myself and the council or from the city to the public. That's completely fair game to discuss. But when you talk about the step of you felt you needed to do this, in my opinion, that's where it steps out of how our process and plan works, and then we're dealing with what we're dealing with as far as like scrambling to provide the context and things like that. That's where I see the differentiating with it.
Have we moved on to the next agenda?
I think we're on to.
All right, so next agenda item is discussion of possible action regarding council releasing
Mr. Mayor,
data.
Can I say one thing about the last item? Just that I think I'm uncomfortable with kind of finger pointing and going back. What I want to say is thank you for writing that letter, Mr. Mayor. I support your intention, which I think was wholly good, to protect Hudson, and I think you did your job well. And I also want to thank Aaron Reeves, the city administrator, because from my perspective, I felt updated frequently through that weekend. And so I think people, you can always look back and say, hey, it wasn't perfect. But I think people were doing the best that they could in a very difficult situation. So I'm actually appreciative of the work that both you guys did.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. Let me just say, it's our law enforcement that really protected our community that weekend. And as I said, our chief and our sheriff did a yeoman's job, not a yeoman's, but yeoman job, plural, in keeping our community safe and coordinating an effort with, I don't even know how many different departments, but at any given time, at every given time in this community, we had between 50 and 60 law enforcement officers on our streets. And we can't thank them enough for all the work they did that weekend.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's on Jeff. I was just trying to be the role of making sure Jeff didn't have to add another layer of communications and things that he was doing. And that was, really where I felt my place was, is to try to keep the council updated as much as it could and try to work as that go-between so Jeff could focus on his real duties. And I think he did an amazing job. And I think that's more than anything, staff-wise, where the thanks should be is with Chief Willems.
Thanks, Paul. Discussion and possible action regarding council releasing data.
Well, briefly, I want to say, for the record too, Joyce, but this can't be overlooked, the confidentiality that was disseminated and violated. As I reflected on the issue of the confidential information in my past 14 years on the city council, I just can't remember a time when there was a blatant disregard for process and the safety and well-being of our city staff and our department employees, in particular to our city's emergency response department, police, fire, and EMS. Under Section 37-5C2, and I quote, in our ordinances, disclosure of confidential information, no official or employee shall, without proper legal authorization, disclose confidential information concerning the property, the government, or the affairs of the city, nor shall he or she use such information to advance financial or other private interests of themselves or others. Council members on this council violated this rule and put people's lives in danger. Possibly could have started a panic or an unrest in this community. spreading fear and trying to lead on fear. The mayor's letter was a council eyes only letter, and well within his authority to execute without council input at the time of the credible threat issued by a professional police and intelligence agency, and not to be shared with social media or immediate friends or neighbors of council members. Again, a blatant disregard to the rules of this council and the safety of our community. The letter wasn't even viewed or seen by all council members, as Joyce just got done saying, before it hit the social media. This issue of confidentiality has been present within our closed sessions as well, in particular during EMS discussions and personnel issues. All this shows is the political games that are played and a lack of real leadership on their part. Exploiting an emergency for selfish political reasons, the members that were and are on the part of spreading sensitive information. And if they cannot stop sharing confidential, sensitive information, maybe they should reevaluate their positions of sitting on the city council. True leaders know their responsibilities and follow the rules and the oaths taken when elected. I urge all of us, including me and all of us, to be vigilant in maintaining safety, security, when being privileged to be in a position where confidentiality must always be sustained for the well-being of our citizens and our community as a whole. So let's take that into perspective. I yield the floor.
All right. All right, thanks, Randy. All right, anybody else? I've got nothing for future agendas other than what's been brought up here today. Anybody?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion's approved. We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night. Thank you.